All right. We are live for another day in politics, in Parliament. We've got a couple things I want to go over, some stuff that has come out within the past, I don't want to say 24 hours, but at least roughly that time. Canada Post should be very careful, and I actually agree with this. If Canada Post doesn't get their stuff together, they could be going bye-bye very soon. Amazon delivers right to our front door and not half a block away at a postal mailbox. Switching to receiving electronic bills was easy. We don't miss having to recycle junk mail flyers. Taxpayers might realize no one misses them. On a positive note, every day that Canada Post is on strike, Canadians save $2 million. If this is accurate information, every day $2 million, and last year Canada Post lost nearly 750 million, $750 million. Holy, my goodness. But yeah, this is what we're dealing with. Canada Post goes on strike, and everybody just kind of sits there and goes, well, we have so many other options, it doesn't matter. Exactly with this argument with Amazon. They deliver right to the front door. No questions, if ands, or buts. Yes, Canada Post delivers to a mailbox, or they deliver to a community box, or however it works where you live. And you have to walk to that to get to your packages or mail or whatever. Oh no, end of the world stuff there. But yeah, Amazon, they don't care. They're not playing these games. They want to make money. Canada Post continues to mess around with their employees, half-assed contracts, union-esque bullshit and garbage right there. Honestly, yeah, I don't think anybody's really missing Canada Post right now. The big news of today, and honestly, is it really gonna happen? Probably not. You want my honest opinion? I don't have any confidence in the fact that they will call a no confidence vote on Trudeau. But is the Trudeau government about to fall? There will be a confidence vote in the House of Commons tomorrow evening. This is what reports are claiming. Happening now, the BLOC leader just took Justin Trudeau on a private ride-along down Jabroni Boulevard.
This is what he's standing against. He's trying to convince Canadians that everything's broken while he forces his MPs to vote against a GST break that's going to help Canadians over the coming months. That's not leadership. That's pandering to the lowest common denominator.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister has everyone unanimously against him. And his so-called Christmas present. Canadians don't want it. Business owners don't want it. Retirees don't want it. Students don't want it. Economists don't want it. Even those who are well off and kind-hearted, they don't want it. No one wants the Prime Minister's Christmas gift. When will the Prime Minister understand that one cannot buy votes? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, Canadians are struggling. That's why we are offering a tax break to all Canadians for the next few months. Mr. Speaker, Canadians who are struggling are those who will not receive a rebate check. You know who is struggling, Mr. Speaker? The Liberals themselves. The Conservatives don't seem to support the proposal. The NDP neither. The Bloc Québécois neither. No one in this House seems to support the rebate check. If the Prime Minister is so sure of himself, why doesn't he make it a matter of confidence and have a confidence vote?
Oh, okay, so yes, that sounds very promising, doesn't it? What if I told you it's not the first time the Bloc has threatened this, and as a matter of fact, the first time they threatened it, they did not go through with it. As a matter of fact, they continued to vote for Trudeau when the time came months ago, when the non-confidence vote or no confidence vote in Trudeau happened. They voted against it. This is the second or third time the BLOC is now switched and has threatened Trudeau with this no confidence vote. Pierre's been pushing this for months and months and months. And now the BLOC and the NDP, they feel threatened, or they haven't received whatever it is, their end of the bargain, their end of the deal. They didn't get what they wanted. And now they want to put up a fight. Now they want to make it about Canadians, even though they've made it about themselves for the past however many months. I don't personally believe a no confidence vote is going to come today. If it does, though, I will be celebrating. And if it passes, holy, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to have a party. Like, I'm going to pop a bottle of champagne. We are going to get hammered at like 2 p.m., 3 p.m. I'm not even joking. And I barely drink anymore. So, like, let's be real here. If a vote of no confidence receiving more signatures than ever before in history has been submitted in the Canadian Parliament for Justin Trudeau to be removed from office, let's be real. Like, if it actually happens today, it's a monumental day. It's just a matter of if it does, and I highly doubt it. I really have my doubts going into question period today.
Presenting petitions, the honourable member for Peterborough.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to present e-petition 4701, the highest signed e-petition in Canadian history with 387,487 signatures. The petitioners state that they have lost confidence in the Prime Minister. The petitioners ask the state and the current government is not acting in the best interest of all citizens. And the petitioners call upon the House of Commons to call for a vote of non-confidence in a federal election 45 days following the vote.
Look, man, it's gotta happen. It's gotta happen. Whether or not it happens today, in a month or so from now, it has to happen. It has to pass. Canadians have held out too long. And especially with stuff like this happening. Canada uncovers 10,000. Only 10,000. I guarantee you there's probably more. Fake student visas with 80% of fraud committed by Indians. This is just the statistics. The AF Post. These are just the facts, ladies and gentlemen. And they're coming out more and more as the Trudeau government continues to fail. One of these international students in Brampton was arrested for allegedly pretending to be an Uber driver and then SAing 3 different women at remote locations. So there you go. There you go. There you go. I'm losing my voice. After you do a week of shows, you start to lose your voice. Okay, we have a funny video here from Trudeau. We have him at a sustainable finance forum on the 28th. This, I guess, happened today. Happened some point today. I was just listen to the words he says. I know it's going to be tough to listen to. I know we really don't want to listen to him. I got some other things we can listen to afterwards. We're not going to listen to him for very long.
Well, I couldn't have said it better, and I'm glad you're saying it. As the leader of the governing party of this country, it's good to hear the insight that you bring to the way that you lead the government. And I really believe in what you've just said, which is that it's a false dichotomy.
It is, but it's not just a theoretical, oh, we should figure out how to do this. We're actually figuring out how to do this at the same time. I mean, the affordability challenges, I mean, everyone in this room knows that we have put forward one of the most ambitious climate plans this country has ever seen. But unless we're actually showing Canadians that we also understand the pressures of cost of living, the concerns about making ends meet right now, we don't get to continue to lead on fighting climate change. But more than just the grocery rebate and the support for workers that we've announced recently, at the core of our climate plan was the idea of putting a price on pollution. We know that's a market-based solution. If you want less of something, put a price on it. We don't want less pollution, so we'll put a price on pollution. And then business...
And that's gonna help Canadians. I just wanted you guys to hear that. I just wanted you guys to hear that. He is so completely out of touch. I swear, I lose intelligence. I lose brain cells. It's like after a weekend of hard drinking, you feel hungover. Every time you listen to Trudeau, it's the same thing.
Housing costs have doubled. Food bank use have doubled. He has done this through a costly carbon tax that's driven up food prices 37% faster in Canada than in the United States of America. We have the worst housing inflation and the worst household debt of any G7 country. $500 billion net has left our country to invest in the United States, creating jobs for American workers with our money. Our GDP per capita is smaller than it was 10 years ago and has dropped more since before COVID than any other G7 country, all while the American economy has boomed. Now we face new threats to our brittle and weak economy. The reality is we have a weakened economy, a weakened border, a weakened military, and a severely weakened Prime Minister. He's desperate. He's lost control, but he's trying to hold on to power. And so he's come up with a irresponsible and inflationist $6 billion tax trick that he will take away right before raising the carbon tax on heat, housing, groceries, and gas in just a few months. Common sense Conservatives will vote against this irresponsible, inflationist, temporary 2-month tax trick, and instead push our plan to axe the carbon tax and axe the sales tax on new homes for everyone, for good. And I would add that now is the worst possible time to be blowing $6 billion trying to save Justin Trudeau's political skin, especially with the threats coming from the United States, with our border in chaos, our economy collapsing, and everything broken. We need real, responsible leadership from a strong, smart Prime Minister who has the brains and backbone to put Canada first. Thank you.
Mr. Poilievre, have you heard anyone associated with your... I thought you liked the idea of cutting taxes.
This isn't, that's why I'm opposed to this. This isn't a tax cut. This is an inflationary 2-month temporary tax trick that will drive up the cost of living. Even today, the food professor was out saying this measure will make food even more expensive. That's what happens when government dumps a bunch of cash into the country without creating more of what cash buys. We need tax relief that actually encourages the economy to produce more of the stuff cash buys, grow more food, build more homes, and produce more energy. If you got an economy with 10 loaves of bread and $10, it's $1 a loaf. If you double the number of dollars to 20, but you still only have 10 loaves of bread, you're not twice as rich. It just means that each loaf of bread costs twice as much. You got to produce more grains and bake more bread rather than creating more cash. And that's what my tax cuts are not just about lowering costs. They're about sparking more production. By axing the carbon tax, our businesses can hire more workers and produce more goods. By axing the sales tax, we're going to get 30,000 extra homes per year every year. By getting rid of the energy cap, we're going to produce more affordable energy. So instead of creating cash, we're going to create more of what cash buys, and our purchasing power will go further.
If the government needs to pass new spending to better secure its borders, would you support that?
Why haven't they done it? they broke the border. Justin Trudeau broke the border. We didn't have these problems before Justin Trudeau. We didn't have Roxham Road before Justin Trudeau. We didn't have these illegal border crossings before Justin Trudeau. We didn't have, the number of asylum claims have gone from 10,000 to over 200,000 under Justin Trudeau, more than 20-fold increase. All the chaos at our border is the result of Justin Trudeau. It's his job to come up with a plan today. You know what we're seeing now, though, is that because the Prime Minister has vacated the border and turned it open to anyone who wants to come in, the premiers are now taking responsibility for our border. Trudeau wants to be in charge of all these provincial areas of jurisdiction, and yet he's not taking care of the one federal job that is most the responsibility of the federal government, which is the border. So we have Quebec sending in the Sûreté du Québec, their police force, to secure the border. Premier Smith, common sense leader, is proposing to use drones, provincial drones, and other police law enforcement measures from her province to secure the borders there. I understand Doug Ford is looking at something similar. So now, because Trudeau has so thoroughly broken the border, we're getting a patchwork of premiers who have no choice but to try and hold the border together with bubble gum, scotch tape, and elastic bands. Just everything is broken after Justin
not
Trudeau.
scotch tape.
We need a carbon tax election to fire him and bring in a strong Prime Minister who can rebuild our borders. Oui, en français. Merci. C'est vrai. Sur la frontière.
All right, so he's going to do it in French, and I quite frankly do not care. I just wanted to play this one last time just to give you guys an idea of exactly what possibly, and I take that with a grain of salt, take this all with a grain of salt, because the BLOC have threatened this multiple times before and have not pulled through with it. Let's take a listen.
This is what he's standing against. He's trying to convince Canadians that everything's broken while he forces his MPs to vote against a GST break that's going to help Canadians over the coming months. That's not leadership. That's pandering to the lowest common denominator.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister has everyone unanimously against him. And his so-called Christmas present. Canadians don't want it, business owners don't want it, retirees don't want it, students don't want it, economists don't want it. Even those who are well off and kind-hearted, they don't want it. No one wants the Prime Minister's Christmas gift. When will the Prime Minister understand that one cannot buy votes? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, Canadians are struggling. That's why we are offering a tax break to all Canadians for the next few months. Mr. Speaker, Canadians who are struggling are those who will not receive a rebate check. You know who is struggling, Mr. Speaker? The Liberals themselves. The Conservatives don't seem to support the proposal. The NDP neither. The Bloc Québécois neither. No one in this House seems to support the rebate check. If the Prime Minister is so sure of himself, why doesn't he make it a matter of confidence and have a confidence vote?
And there you have it. That was yesterday during question period. It got kind of heated, but not as heated as last week when 3 Conservative MPs got the boot and Darth Fungus said, "Get out of Parliament for the day." What an interesting time. Let's get into House of Commons proceedings. I just want to thank you all for joining right now. Make sure you hit that like button, hit that sub button if you are new. Let's get into it.
Business at their busiest time of the year, Madam Speaker. How can this government justify this at this point when business is panning it? Economists are panning this plan as not structurally fixing it. They could do that by eliminating the carbon tax and other tax measures, but they're just providing crumbs right now. And worse yet, they're undermining democracy. They're undermining this Parliament with this spending measure with very little scrutiny. This government and the NDP partners are circling the bowl right now, and they're desperate to try to find anything they can to find any relevance in their existence. They're going to fail on this, and then we're going to have a common sense Conservative government that's going to do the things that needs to be done to fix this country, to return normalcy and decency back to it.
The Honourable Minister of National Revenue. Madam Speaker, I'm shocked by that. Seriously, how can he say that we don't respect democracy when they, Conservatives, with the support of the other parties, are blocking this Parliament and have been for weeks? That's the insult to democracy. They are deliberately trying to break our democracy and not respect our institutions. Yes, we have lots of constructive measures to propose with, for example, taking the GST off the construction of housing and helping people who provide food in school settings. And so we have a green industrial strategy as well to encourage companies to invest in R&D and innovation. So we have lots of constructive measures to propose for our economy, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I want to thank the Minister for her speech, but, you know, Canadians need a break right now. And so giving them a break over the holidays, it's supportable, but the NDP just a few weeks ago proposed taking the GST off essentials permanently. And while, you know, this is a small bit for Canadians, and of course we want any break they can get, but why not take the GST off essentials permanently?
The Honourable Minister of National Revenue. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I do understand the question from my colleague. It's important. So we're starting off by giving people a break on the GST for 2 months, which is a particularly tough time for Canadians. And
the tough times you've created.
To strike the right balance with these measures, helping people who are the most vulnerable at times, and then at other times helping workers. At sometimes we're helping people with disabilities. At other times we're helping people, seniors. So we have to strike a balance. And we know that times are tough for workers. So by creating this GST holiday, GST, HST holiday, that will help people out during this particularly tough time.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. You know, this little gift that they're fake Christmas gift, Madam Speaker, is exactly what this HST holiday is, given that Christmas trees will be GST, HST free in Newfoundland and Labrador, but the decorations to go on them, well, hopefully you had some from last year, because guess what? Decorations will still have the HST and GST in Newfoundland and Labrador, and menorahs aren't included. So, you know, is there some anti-Semitism going on? We know there's anti-seniorism and anti-disabled, because why are those needy groups not allowed the $250 checks that people making $150,000 are going to be able to receive? And then the federal pension plan was just robbed of $2 million. And where did that go? To this fake Christmas gift, Madam Speaker? Thank you.
Honourable Minister of National Revenue. Thank you, Madam Speaker. My colleague is pretty hard to follow. It wasn't very clear. But one thing is for sure, we're not fake. When we announce things, they're real things, not fake things. And the dental care I don't know what planet the member's living on. There are hundreds of thousands of Canadians who are already taking advantage of the dental care program, so it's not fake. Could I ask the member for Poilievre-Jacques-Cartier to either be quiet or leave the chamber? The Honourable Minister. So I can assure you, when we announce something, we go ahead with it, and it's totally real. For example, the disability benefit, which is very real, Madam Speaker. Thank you.
Essential.
Yes, Madam Speaker, thank you so much. I'd like to ask to the Minister, the CFIB, as was commented on by a Conservative colleague, they're calling on the Department of Finance to give affected small businesses a credit, a minimum of $1,000 in their GST, HST accounts to cover the administrative and programming costs of what this will cost to them for the holiday season. Is the government willing to do that to ensure that this isn't hurting those small businesses? Certainly the NDP is in favor of that. I'm wondering if the government is. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The Honourable Minister of National Revenue. So we also heard the request from Restaurant Canada. Well, Restaurant Canada said this would be beneficial to them. So I think that there is an advantage for businesses here who are going to be able to advertise this tax break. And we know that businesses, and, you know, up until not too long ago, I was a business owner. I know what it's like to run a business. And when we see an advantage for our clients, we know that it's an advantage for us as well. Our entrepreneurs are more and more well equipped with good computer systems, and I'm sure they'll be able to apply this tax break in the coming months.
Honourable Member for Mission Mascot Fraser Kennedy.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Because the NDP Liberals are trying to fool Canadians with this tax trick, small businesses are forced and are very much scrambling to reprogram their point of sales machines and to find the time and money to pay for these changes. Madam Speaker, it's a shame that the minister here today did not care to think about the impact this change would have on the small businesses this government purports to help. We all know an election is coming. Can we just stop with the desperation and call a carbon tax election now?
The Honourable Minister of National Revenue. Thank you, Madam Speaker. So once again, I think that our system of small and medium-sized businesses and big businesses is working well in the country. They're well equipped, the technology is ready, and they'll certainly be able to put these changes into application. When it's good for consumers, it's good for businesses. And so I have full confidence that it's going to be perfectly doable and reasonable. Thank you.
Member for Aurora Oak Ridges, Richmond Hill.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I noticed that the opposition is calling this a gimmick, a fraud, a trick, because they can't call it what it is, which is a tax cut. If they called it a tax cut, they would have to vote for it because they've been asking for a tax cut. So we're giving them this tax cut. And the only gimmicky thing here is what the Conservatives have been doing for the last while in the House by blocking any progress. But I wanted to say in response to calling this a fraud that stakeholders,
your entire party's a
this
gimmick.
is a big win for the restaurant industry. It restores much needed hope in the industry. We're optimistic it will translate into increased spending at local restaurants across the country. So could I please ask the minister if she could comment on why the timing of this tax break is so important for restaurants?
The Honourable Minister of National Revenue. Well, thank you, Madam Speaker, and I'd like to thank my colleague because, yeah, absolutely, she's brought forward an opinion that shows the extent to which this is going to be beneficial for our businesses. And, you know, we know that businesses often have an increase of business in December, but January and February tend to be tougher months. So by having the possibility to offer a rebate of 5 to 13%, according to the taxes that are affected in various provinces, well, that's going to allow those businesses, and particularly restaurateurs, to better serve their clientele. The Honourable Member for Fort McMurray Cold Lake. Thank you, Madam Speaker. So I have a simple question for the minister. Why a little GST break on Christmas trees but not on menorahs? The Honourable Minister of National Revenue. Well, thank you, Madam Speaker. So there's quite a long list of products that are particularly in demand during the holiday season. And among other things, there's children's clothing, gifts for children. And the intention is to ensure that a great number will be able to benefit from this tax break.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. And I would like to ask the Minister for a little bit of clarity. You know, I've been speaking to business owners in Edmonton, Strathcona. I just spoke to a restaurant owner this morning, actually, and her concern was, I mean, the minister has said over and over again that there's computers and it's easy to do. This business owner was telling me that it will be very, very difficult for her to do that. And the problem is that it's at a moment in time where business owners are already very busy because the Christmas rush has already started for many of these businesses. Now, for her, what she would have liked to have seen was that this would have come sooner, that this would not have been so last minute. And I'm wondering if the minister could comment on the fact that it took, weeks after the NDP had called for this action to be taken for the government to finally take the steps, and in fact has not provided the information that businesses need to be able to do the job, to be able to get through the holiday season, the very busiest season of the year for them.
The Honourable Minister of National Revenue. Thank you, Madam Speaker. This is indeed a very busy season for our entrepreneurs, for restaurants, for our retailers this pre-holiday season, and we're certainly working with the full team at the Canada Revenue Agency on this. Today, even, you'll see on the CRA website a link that helps to explain all the information related to this tax break for the next 2 months, from December 14th to February 15th. So that information is on the CRA website, and we remain obviously in touch with the various associations that represent businesses so that we can answer their questions in an expedited way. And we'll continue to add documentation to that webpage so that businesses have all the information they need at their fingertips. The Honourable Member for Red Deer Lacombe.
I'm rising to ask a question on behalf of a business owner in my constituency who has 3 dollar stores. He has about 3,000 items per store that he'll have to change. Given 30 seconds per item, to go through, that's 90,000 seconds, that's 1,500 minutes, that's 25 hours. Between 9 p.m. that night and 9 a.m. the next morning, he has to pay somebody 25 hours, likely overtime. So we're going to call that $30 an hour times 750 hours is $1,500 per store, because he's got to pay them to do it. To take the GST off, put the GST back on, times 3 stores, it's $4,500. What's the government going to do to put $4,500 back into this business owner's pocket that he has to pay for their bad idea?
The Honourable Minister of National Revenue. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Well, I'm happy to know that employees who work in these businesses get $30 an hour in income. So once again, I think that our business owners will find a way, with all the systems they have at their disposal, to make the changes that are necessary, because it's important to give this tax holiday to Canadians during the holiday season. And once again, businesses know that what's good for consumers is good for them. It increases business, and so it's good to make those investments. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you very much. And I've listened to this conversation a lot, and truly it is a gimmick, Madam Speaker. When you're looking at this, we have money that will not be going out like they had promised. But when we're looking at people going to buy their Christmas gifts as of December 14th, ask any family member that's trying to get organized, that's already done. We know the costs are being reduced for only 2 months, and as of February 15th, it will not exist. So the impact of these businesses long-term will also be difficult. I want to go back to the question specifically to the businesses. Have they actually done a cost evaluation of how much it's actually going to cost small business with employees under 10, how much it's going to cost for this GST holiday?
The Honourable Minister of National Revenue. Well, Madam Speaker, we're talking about a GST rebate for 2 months, which is going to benefit all Canadians. So on items that are among the most purchased during the holiday season, and this holiday is going to continue after the holidays, because we know that January, February is always a bit difficult. The credit cards are, always a bit more full. So this is going to give Canadians a break during this time of the year where, there's a lot of pressure on parents and grandparents. So we really want to make sure that with this tax holiday that we're giving Canadians a boost.
I'm Lady Smith.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you to my colleague. Madam Speaker, I myself and of course my NDP colleagues understand full well that people are struggling to make ends meet right now, and anything that we can do to help people to be able to make ends meet, to just add a little bit of help to their pockets is a positive thing. Something that's coming up over and over again today is around the impacts on businesses, around the items that are being chosen to have the GST removed off of them. And I agree, there are some problems with that. And I'm wondering if the member could share why she and the Liberal Party did not just follow through with what the NDP was asking for, which is having GST removed off all essentials permanently, including home heating, cell phones, and internet and groceries. None of these problems that are being expressed by the Conservatives right now would even be an issue if they had just followed through with removing them off all products, all essential products for Canadians. Why did the Liberals not do that? Thank you.
The Honourable Minister of National Revenue. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Well, it's always difficult to find the right balance, right? There are some who want more, there are some who want less. But I think that with this measure, which is timely, which comes at a critical time in the year, I think we've found the right balance. And once again, my colleague earlier said it very clearly. Restaurants Canada, which represents a huge number of restaurants across the country, have confirmed that for them this was great news, that they are ready to make the necessary changes. And once again, when it's good for consumers, it's good for businesses.
Colchester. Madam Speaker, obviously the NDP Liberal coalition, which is alive and well, is keen to talk about their tax trickery when we know it's not a tax cut because, of course, it's not permanent. The other interesting thing is we know that 2 million Canadians are going to a food bank every month. We know that 1 in 4 parents are giving up meals to feed their children. We know that there are cases of scurvy in this country. And what do we have the GST removed from? Candies, confectionery.
With 4 weeks to go until Christmas Day, there is no end in sight for the strike at Canada Post. Today,
popcorn coated or treated with candy, chocolate, sugars, or artificial sweeteners, chips, crisps, puffs, curls, sticks of popcorn, brittle pretzels, salted.
My apologies for that audio cut.
Or similar fruit-based snacks. This is ridiculous. We have people starving in this country because of the bad policies of this NDP Liberal government, and they want to give people chips and crisps? Nonsense.
The Honourable Minister of National Revenue. Thank you, Madam Speaker. There's nothing that we can say that will make the Conservatives support a measure that will help Canadians. It's against their religion, helping Canadians. We've seen that with
against their religion.
School food.
You just did 10 years straight of not helping Canadians.
Not willing to support programs that we're putting in place to, like school food programs. And, when we're talking about the tax holiday, we're also talking about diapers and car seats, kids' clothing, kids' shoes, pre-prepared foods. So there's a wide range of products that are essential products, diapers, clothes, again. So, and there are also a number of, other important products, particularly for the holiday season. Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Honourable Member from Maguagon. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I have a question when it comes to the impact on businesses, because I wonder if the Liberals consulted businesses before bringing this measure into place, because, to have to make so many changes for just 2 months, that's a lot of costs for small businesses. And I think, we're talking with businesses and people in our riding who are maybe going to make the choice to close. There are Christmas markets, for example, who are saying, listen, it's not worth the trouble for me. What are they saying to those businesses? Are we supposed to say, okay, no big deal? And does this not create a sort of inflation? Because at some point, the missing money, the money they don't bring in is going to have to come back. The Honourable Member, the Minister for National Revenue. Well, listen, when it comes to being dramatic, that's about the best performance I've seen today. Christmas markets. Listen, in my region, we have a lot of Christmas markets. In my 35 municipalities, there's a lot of them, and I'm very happy for that. And once again, this tax holiday applies mainly to products for kids, diapers, clothing, car seats, shoes. So what we want here is to give Canadians a break during the holiday season and during the following weeks and months, because it's at that time when Canadians need a bit of a boost. Parents, grandparents are under pressure. They want to take kids out to restaurants, for example. And so that's why we're trying to give Canadians a boost when they need it.
Man, all I'm going to say is if they actually pass this quote-unquote 2-month break, buy as much as you can during that time, because afterwards it's gonna get really rough and things are probably gonna get extremely expensive.
Madam Speaker, this will make a world of a difference. What I do is I sympathize for the Conservatives who are being told, are being shackled, that they cannot vote for this tax measure for their constituents. They should stand up and support their constituents. They should support this important tax measure, this important bill. Madam Speaker, I want to ask the Minister, how will this impact, how will this affect positively the residents of Mississauga East Cooksville?
The Honourable Minister of National Revenue. Well, thank you, Madam Speaker. And I absolutely agree with my colleague. This measure will help Canadians, and because of that, we can't expect the Conservatives to support it. It goes against everything that they do in this House. When it comes to, for example, the Canada Disability Benefit, or when it comes to approving funding for school food programs, the Conservatives aren't present. We can't count on them. So once again, unfortunately, Madam Speaker, we want to give Canadians a tax break on GST and HST in various provinces so that the holidays can be more affordable, and so that we can do a bit more to help kids, among others. That's what we want to do at this time. We want to give parents, workers, grandparents a break in the holidays and the time after them. Thank you.
Member for South Shore St. Margaret's.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. What we have here is the Liberal Minister of National Revenue, the person responsible for collecting all your taxes in Canada, defending the 2-month tax trick of the Liberals to reduce taxes on cheesies and chips and beer. But most of today, that minister has been bragging about the lower cost restaurant meals that this will allow people to get. I'd like to ask the Minister of National Revenue, who has access to all the tax data in Canada, how many of the 2 million people a month that line up at the food bank will benefit from the lower cost restaurant food?
The Honourable Minister of National Revenue. Thank you, Madam Speaker. So, once again, this tax holiday that we want to offer Canadians over the coming months covers children's clothing, diapers, children's shoes, car seats, books as well. Books, toys, puzzles, board games, prepared foods. A prepared meal that you might bring home. So this is something that our government has tried to do from the very beginning. We want to help people when they need it most. We want to help those who need it most. We've done that with the Canada Child Benefit. You'll remember, back in the day, all families across Canada under the Conservatives got the same amount of money. We've made some changes so that the money that families get is proportionate to their amount of revenue. That's lifted millions of kids out of poverty. So we want to continue doing this, giving Canadians a boost during the holiday season.
Facing a very serious situation in Canada with Canadians really struggling. As we know, 1 in 5 children are living in poverty, 2 million at food banks, and homeless encampments are popping up all over our cities, all over the country. And what's really interesting about this is it almost seems that the Liberals are finally admitting that Canadians are, in fact, really struggling after 9 years of their governance. And what makes this a trick, Madam Speaker, is that they're selling it as some big grandiose gesture to bring relief, when really it's only on relatively few items for relatively only a few weeks. So my question is, how can they possibly justify expecting all this praise for this when really all this amounts to is a few breadcrumbs for Canadians, when what they need is large-scale, permanent tax breaks, like a carbon tax, axing the carbon tax. That's what Canadians need, Madam Speaker, not a few breadcrumbs from this Liberal government for a few measly weeks, Madam Speaker.
The Honourable Minister of National Revenue. Well, what disrespect for Canadians, Madam Speaker. We know that, what we're...
Oh, tell me you're out of touch without telling me you're out of touch.
What would the member say about when she's talking about breadcrumbs? No, the dental care program, people, particularly seniors, are really benefiting from that. The disability benefit, the Canada Child Benefit, and all the investments that we've made in the housing sector. So we are there to help Canadians, Madam Speaker, but we certainly can't count on the Conservatives. They're going to be there to cut if ever they come back to power.
Go finance a brief question.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Today, the question on this debate is the closure motion and not the question of the bill itself and the...
What are the odds that she's drunk right now?
I have a question for my friend, the minister. I am always against closure motions, but after almost 2 months where we've been here in this House in a situation where we've been paralyzed, I'm going to vote in favor. But I will ask the minister if there will be changes put in place to protect the most vulnerable in Canada in the next versions, or the next bills coming up.
Yeah, Greg muted my stream. He muted my microphone.
Madam Speaker, so obviously right now we're talking about this particular tax holiday, but as we've seen over the last few years, our government is there to help the most vulnerable Canadians. We've shown that in many ways with the Canada Child Benefit, with the dental benefit, with the food program in schools, and many more.
To interrupt the proceedings at this time and put forth with the question on the motion now before the House. The
question is as follows. Madame Gould, seconded by Ms. Bibeau, proposes that with respect to the study number 43, the debate be now not adjourned.
Member for Battle River Crowfoot is going.
Madam Speaker, because this is such an important issue for democracy, Conservatives would ask for a recorded vote.
Polling the members.
Oh, things are getting kind of serious here before question period. Half an hour? Oh my goodness. Well, there goes all the viewership. Everybody just left. We have half an hour to kill. I guess while we're waiting, I want to play this video back. This is kind of the entire reason as to why the stream is titled what it is. Let's take a listen.
This is what he's standing against. He's trying to convince Canadians that everything's broken while he forces his MPs to vote against a GST break that's going to help Canadians over the coming months. That's not leadership. That's pandering to the lowest common denominator.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister has everyone unanimously against him and his so-called Christmas present. Canadians don't want it. Business owners don't want it. Retirees don't want it. Students don't want it. Economists don't want it. Even those who are well off and kind-hearted, they don't want it. No one wants the Prime Minister's Christmas gift. When will the Prime Minister understand that one cannot buy votes? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, Canadians are struggling. That's why we are offering a tax break to all Canadians for the next few months. Mr. Speaker, Canadians who are struggling are those who will not receive a rebate check. You know who is struggling, Mr. Speaker? The Liberals themselves. The Conservatives don't seem to support the proposal. The NDP neither. The Bloc Québécois neither. No one in this House seems to support the rebate check. If the Prime Minister is so sure of himself, why doesn't he make it a matter of confidence and have a confidence vote?
The all bark, no bite from the Bloc Québécois. Although there is a lot of buzz around this conversation right now, there will be a confidence vote in the House of Commons tomorrow evening. Is Trudeau's government about to fall? I don't know if it will. I don't think this confidence vote is going to happen. That is just my personal opinion. There was an emergency debate yesterday, and Trudeau no-showed the emergency debate over the U.S. tariffs that Trump is going to impose on Canada and Mexico. 25% if we don't pull ourselves together and fix our borders. Pierre had, in my opinion, a pretty good speech about this. So yes, this is technically a replay from yesterday, but I wanted to play it once more just in case you didn't see it.
Mr. Speaker, here is the sad reality. Our GDP per capita is smaller than it was 10 years ago, even while the American economy per capita has grown by 18%. Our per capita GDP fell more than any other G7 country since the year before COVID. We're one of the only countries that has not recovered its economy since before COVID happened. In reality, our housing costs have doubled, our national debt has doubled, food bank use have all doubled in the last 4 years. All of this before the threat of these tariffs. Before the threat of these tariffs, food prices had increased 37% faster in Canada than in the United States of America. Before the threat of these tariffs, our national debt had grown by over 100% in a decade. Before the threat of these tariffs, $500 billion USD more Canadian investment went south than came back. That's Canadian investment dollars building American mines, factories, pipelines, paying American, not Canadian, wages. And on top of that, the threats that we heard last night should have come as no surprise. Yet, for some reason, they did surprise the Prime Minister and the Finance Minister. It was only 20 days ago that the Finance Minister said, Canada will be fine, nothing to worry about. Well, they should have seen this coming a mile away. President Trump had been saying that he would do this. He was elected 3 weeks ago. You'd think the Prime Minister would have been furiously planning and preparing, meeting with the premiers and talking about a counter plan during that time. And now we learn that since the threat happened, he's come up with exactly one response: a Zoom call. He's going to hold a Zoom call tomorrow. Of course, the media is absolutely captivated by this development. There's going to be a Zoom call between 11 or 12 politicians, and somehow this is going to solve the problem. We need a real plan, real action that will defend our economy and our security, and most of all, to put Canada first. First, Mr. Speaker, the debate is over. There can be no tax increases. The tax increases the Prime Minister proposed on work, investment, energy were irresponsible and destructive all along. But now they are economic suicide. Think about the impact that a 61-cent a litre carbon tax would have when the tax is zero south of the border. President Trump has made it clear he wants our jobs and our businesses. You can only imagine his economic development teams calling trucking companies, factories, forestry enterprises, saying, hey, you're facing a 61-cent a litre carbon tax north of the border. Drive 50 kilometers south and we have zero carbon tax. By the way, business and personal taxes are already much lower and will drop further. There will be a powerful sucking sound of jobs, businesses, and money leaving our country to enrich the United States. This is like a tariff imposed by our own government on our own economy, compounded with a real tariff from the United States of America, that this would cripple our economy. So we are calling for the Prime Minister to announce today that he will cancel all tax increases on energy, on work, on businesses. Let's give our people a fighting chance to save their jobs. Secondly, Canadian energy is not the enemy. Our energy sector is our #1 net export. Yet the Prime Minister has made it explicit that he wants to phase out that sector. He has blocked 2 pipelines, he blocked the Tech Frontier mine, and he has prevented us from building a single solitary LNG liquefaction plant, which, by the way, would have allowed us to ship our natural gas to countries other than the United States of America. Right now, because the Prime Minister has blocked LNG liquefaction on both coasts, we're stuck giving every single cubic foot of LNG we export to the Americans on their terms so that they can liquefy it, they can upgrade it, and they can turn it into a profit, something that to which, presumably, the 25% tariff would apply. We need to end this madness. First of all, we must announce here and now the cancellation of the production cut for the Canadian oil and gas sector. We should approve LNG liquefaction plants, take advantage of the half as long shipping distances to both Asia and Europe compared to the Americans. We should go around the Americans and send our gas to displace dirty dictator energy, to reduce coal fire burning, to use our clean Canadian hydro to liquefy it, to send it off to Europe and break European dependence on Putin, to turn dollars for dictators into paychecks for our people in this country. Now look at the state of our military. It is severely weakened after 9 years of this president. Prime Minister, Mr. Speaker, in 2023, Canada spent more money on consultants and professional services than we did on our Army, Navy, and Air Force combined. The Army spent $34 million on new sleeping bags that aren't even suitable for Canadian winters. Half of military vehicles aren't fit to deploy. We've run out of ammunition, 155mm artillery shells, with no plans to reload. While the Prime Minister spends millions on Liberal link green companies, he's not able to provide the necessary shells and ammo to fire on a potential future enemy. The Liberal government has now announced it will cut a further $1 billion from the budget. Canadian troops in Latvia had to buy their own helmets, rain gear, and vests. Canadian troops in Poland are not being reimbursed for their meals. D&D is hiking rents on soldiers even as they struggle to retain and recruit members. The military is short 16,500 servicemen and women, but only recruited 4,000 last year, a total of 4,000 all of last year. Weird, woke, wasteful obsessions undermined our military and drive down recruitment. The reason why the Canadian military cannot recruit is because young men and women do not want anything to do with the divisive identity politics that's being imposed on the forces by this government. And rather than fixing this problem, the minister in question is more worried about banning a Navy marching song that is not politically correct. We will have a warrior culture, not a woke culture. Now, we know this is all going to cost money, and that's going to be difficult because we will inherit a dumpster fire of a budget. We know that Canada's families are the most indebted in the G7. The national debt has doubled in size, and the Prime Minister's spending is still out of control. He's added more debt than the 22 prior Prime Ministers combined and keeps piling it on. That said, and by the way, his big priority now is to take GST off potato chips. Can you imagine that being your economic priority in the current environment we're in today? Mr. Speaker, we have a real plan, and a plan that we will build out between now and the next election. A common-sense plan that will cut back on foreign aid to dictators, terrorists, and global bureaucracies, eliminate useless back-office bureaucracies, end procurement boondoggles, and redirect all of those billions in savings to rebuilding our forces. And this is how we will do it. We will expand our presence in the north to keep Beijing and the Russians out. We will secure the continent against attacks and threats. The world's best cybersecurity, artificial intelligence, optical and drone technology. We will expand the reserves and make sure they are trained for both the military and the civilian economy so that they are ready to be called on, God forbid, in the event of war. We will get more bang for our buck, as we proved that we could do under the previous Conservative government. Yes, we had a lean, mean fighting machine. Yes, we were efficient. But under the previous Conservative government, with that efficient spending, we were able to buy 5 Globemasters, massive strategic airlift, the Hercules aircraft, 17 Hercules aircraft, the Chinook helicopters, the Leopard 2 tanks, the refurbishment of our refueling vessels. The list goes on. And by the way, we were able to help our American friends destroy ISIS and Al-Qaeda. At that time, they had no concerns about us carrying our weight because we were punching above our weight, which protected our security and our economy. And then there's the border. We need to re-secure our border as part of this plan, Mr. Speaker. CBS reported, and I quote, that the Department of Justice charged Mohammed Khan, a 20-year-old Pakistani citizen living in Canada, with plotting to conduct an ISIS-inspired attack on the New York Jewish Center. Mr. Speaker, Khan was arrested in Armstrong in Quebec, Canada, just 12 miles from the U.S. This is on top of another ISIS fighter who came into Canada, got citizenship after allegedly being videotaped cutting up a human body on a crucifix in the Middle East. Mr. Speaker, we have to screen people coming into our country. We have to identify threats and interrupt them before they harm us or our allies. There are 4.9 million permits and visas for people that will, in Canada today, who are not citizens or permanent residents, that will run out in December of next year. Many of them are great people, but when their permits run out and they're not renewed, they must leave. We need a plan from the government on how they're going to get these millions of people to go back to their home country, not be tempted by a stronger U.S. economy to cross into the U.S., thus threatening the security of the border and turning the Americans against us. We must crack down on drugs. We must scan the shipping containers, get our people into treatment and recovery to bring them home drug-free, not to please Donald Trump, but to prevent more tragic deaths of our people. In other words, we need all of this to say that we need to put our country and our people first. In the words of Laurier, the great motto must be Canada first, Canada last, Canada always.
Alrighty, and there you have it. That's why I thought it was a pretty good speech to add on top of the Trump and Trudeau situation from a G7 summit 6 years ago. Trump in the middle, surrounded by other world leaders, while Trudeau is where he always is, on the outside looking in. Guys, Trump is back in his second term, and the same thing is going to happen. If we don't get Trudeau out, if we don't take action as Canadians, things are going to happen as we get completely forgotten about. He's just being ignored. It's like he's not even there. He moves in slightly, and they actually look away from him. So there you go. If we don't get him out, it's going to be quite brutal indeed. We are actually on a 14-minute mark for the vote that they wanted to have. We have a little scrum here. MPs speaking with reporters. I don't know who is going to appear. I don't know if anybody is going to appear. Typically they do these, and it's just people walking back and forth. So I guess I will have to try to find some stuff here to talk about or go over as we wait, unless somebody appears within the next couple minutes here. This is our parliament. It's just a tourist attraction, apparently. Well, let's just take pictures in front of the House of Commons doors. My God. My God. I hope everybody is having a fantastic day or night, depending on where you are from. Make sure you hit that like button, hit that sub button if you are enjoying the stream so far. We are about to get into question period very, very soon, within the next possibly 5 to 10 minutes. The stream should go up, and we should be able to, whoa, that was loud. We should be able to see what everybody is going to be talking about. Actually, no, they're going to be waiting for the full 13-minute countdown. They're going to wait for the entire house to fill to do the vote. They are actually going to do that. We have Senate proceedings in roughly a minute. Maybe we can watch a little bit of that. We will watch a little bit of that while we wait. Today could very well be a very big day. If this no confidence vote actually goes through, they actually, it's not all just words. They actually walk the walk. This could be a very interesting end of the day to question period. Typically they do point of orders, but I don't know what's going to happen here. This 14-minute break they have currently taken appears to be for something other than the non-confidence vote. I can't remember specifically what they were talking about before they decided to cut it off, but there could be some very big moves made in the House of Commons today. Parliament could actually see some groundbreaking stuff for once. I don't know. Maybe. It's possible. I'm hoping. I think everybody is. I think everybody is
on essential
quite tired.
items
Like
groceries,
like
diapers, like toys and children's clothing.
Everybody is probably tired of seeing people like her lie through her teeth over and over again.
Mom of a 10-month-old baby, I know how expensive it is to be buying diapers. And for Pierre Poilievre...
Oh, so you've realized what you've done to the country after 10 years, huh, Karina?
Opposed to giving Canadians a break over the next couple of months, I think is really disappointing. And I think it's really disingenuous of him. You know, I speak to families in my community in Burlington all the time, and, you know, people who don't have kids as well, about how expensive groceries are, about how things are challenging right now. And as...
Wow, when the Liberal MPs are actually coming into reality and figuring out how bad things are. Congratulations. Congratulations.
Across this country. And the fact
these people are deranged and out of touch.
Politics than support Canadians, I think is very indicative of who he is and what he really stands for. And I can tell you, it's not for Canadians. When I was in Burlington last week, I was at a tree lighting in my community, and in addition to kicking off the holiday season, I talked about what this tax relief would be for. And people were genuinely interested and excited about it, because we know as Canadians, our costs go up over the holidays and into the winter months. And for someone who is buying diapers, who is looking to buy toys for their kids for the holidays, who is needing to buy clothing for their growing children and a winter coat and all of those things, those savings make a real difference for them.
You can't
and
eat toys.
Think it's really, really disappointing, and I think unfair and a bit hypocritical from the Conservative leader to be against that. Comme j'ai dit en anglais, nous sommes ici.
All right, so she's going to speak in French, and I, quite frankly, don't even want to hear her in English. So let's head back over to the Senate proceedings, shall we? While we wait for the House of Commons to fill up, there's going to be a big vote. I don't know what it is. I don't think it's not the no confidence vote, but they have decided to delay the proceedings until the chambers have filled up entirely to vote on this issue. Whatever this topic is they are going on about. I want to think it's the 2-month break, the 2-month tax break, or the air quotations tax break. I just want to let you guys know, when the government misses out on 2 months of taxpayer money, they miss out on millions of dollars. What do you think is going to happen after that 2-month period is over? They are going to raise prices tenfold to recover and recoup the loss. They are not just going to sit there and go, well, we lost millions of dollars due to Canadians. Let's tax them even further. No, that's exactly what they're going to do. Yeah, it's going to be really bad. So if this passes, which I'm praying it doesn't, if this 2-month break actually passes, abuse it. Buy as much as you can, as much food, as many diapers or clothes or whatever the case is, because afterwards it's going to get brutal. You think things are expensive now? Just wait. Just wait if this 2-month period actually goes through.
And I did not want a full year to go by without us remembering him. I therefore rise today to pay respect to our friend and this great man. Senator Como liked a good laugh, so I don't think he would mind me telling this story. A few days before his electoral victory in the federal election of 1984, Brian Mulroney stood before a crowded auditorium in Nova Scotia alongside his candidate for Southwest Nova. Mr. Mulroney introduced him by saying, "My good friend, Jerry Como." A reporter in the gym was heard asking, "Did he say Harry Como?" That reporter might not have known who Jerry Como was, but the people of his riding sure did, and they elected him to serve on their behalf in the House of Commons. He unfortunately lost re-election in 1980.
So as we wait for question period to start, this is just the Senate proceedings. I've actually never watched Senate proceedings before. I typically don't. But because of everything that is going on right now, because of the high stakes vote that is about to possibly happen today, and the vote that is going to happen based on the 2-month tax break, a lot is happening right now. They are waiting for the chamber to fill up. So instead of watching a green screen with a timer on it, I decided to throw on this.
Day as his proudest moment in the Senate. He was also rightly proud of his years of work as chair of our Fisheries Committee. Senator Como served as deputy leader of the government in the Senate for the first 5 years of Prime Minister Harper's government. In that role, he was extremely effective in moving forward the Harper government's common-sense conservative agenda. For much of that time, there was a small conservative caucus in the Senate, greatly outnumbered by many long years of Liberal government. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? Due in no small part to his good relationships all throughout the Senate, Senator Como was able to achieve the government's legislative goals. His loyalty to this institution and to his party, his sense of duty, and his personal integrity were evident all throughout his 23 years in the Senate. In recognition of his service to Canada, Prime Minister Harper named him to the Privy Council. In his retirement, Senator Como remained active in his community, notably serving as a volunteer for Nova Scotia's Bangor Sawmill Museum. Since his passing last December, he has been mourned by friends and colleagues across Canada. Sadly, his devoted wife of 53 years, Aurora, passed away in February. They were a wonderful team. And on behalf of the Conservative Caucus, I offer condolences to the Como family. May they both rest in peace.
Senator McAdam.
I rise today to celebrate a woman widely regarded as one of Canada's most beloved authors, whose stories and timeless characters have touched the hearts of millions across the world, Lucy Maud Montgomery. This Saturday marks the 150th anniversary of her birth, and I pay tribute not only to her literary genius, but also to her enduring legacy. Born on November 30th, 1874, Montgomery grew up on Prince Edward Island. Her surroundings, in brilliant hues of ruby, emerald, and sapphire, she described, would later become the vivid backdrop for her most famous work, Anne of Green Gables. Despite the early loss of her mother, a strict and lonely upbringing with her grandparents, and the discrimination she faced in an era when women writers were often overlooked, Montgomery maintained a boundless imagination and a resilient spirit, two qualities that shine through in her writing. The beloved character Anne Shirley, like her creator, dared to dream beyond the limitations of her circumstances. At a time when women's roles were largely confined to domestic spaces, Montgomery's portrayal of strong, complex female characters was groundbreaking.
Yes, Jagmeet is pretty much holding us hostage right now with his pension because he could have voted. He had the opportunity to do so. And now all of a sudden, he's flipped the switch and he's now against Trudeau. But he still sits there and waits for his pension. The NDP is such a joke, man.
To life in a variety of mediums. Anne of Green Gables, the musical, premiered in Charlottetown in 1965 and continues to be performed today. Other famous award-winning adaptations of her stories have amassed millions of viewers. It is also important to acknowledge... If
you guys are new here, make sure you hit that like button, hit that sub button. We are roughly 2 minutes away from question period starting.
By letting others know they are not alone. The PEI chapter of the Canadian Mental Health Association has unveiled a special memorial bench at Montgomery's childhood home in recognition of World Suicide Prevention Day. The bench holds the inscription, "Dear old world, you are very lovely, and I am glad to be alive in you." Montgomery's work played a crucial role in putting Canada and Prince Edward Island on the literary map, and has been a source of inspiration for prominent authors who continue to challenge societal norms through literature. I invite you all to revisit or introduce yourself to Lucy Maud Montgomery's writings and to experience the charm of the island that moved her so deeply throughout her life. In her words, "You never know what peace is until you walk on the shores or in the fields or along the winding red roads of Prince Edward Island in a summer twilight, when the dew is falling and the old stars are peeping out, and the sea keeps its mighty tryst with the little land it loves." Thank you.
Honourable Senators, I wish to draw your attention to the presence in the gallery of His Excellency Gaspars Ozolinsh, Ambassador of the Republic of Latvia to Canada, Major General Simon Bernard, Deputy Commander, Canadian Joint Operations Command, and other members of the Canadian Armed Forces, and they are the guests of the Honourable Senators Patterson and Wells, Newfoundland and Labrador, and on behalf of all Senators, I welcome you to the Senate of Canada.
Hell yeah. Let's go. The Canadian troops showing up.
Senator Patterson.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I recently visited Poland, Estonia, and Latvia as part of the Canadian-Europe Interparliamentary Association with my fellow parliamentarians in order to engage with governmental counterparts and to meet with Canadian Armed Forces members serving under the land force elements of Operation Reassurance, Canada's contribution to NATO for deterrence on NATO's eastern flank. With Latvia as our outstanding host nation, an unprecedented 14 countries will make up the NATO Multinational Brigade Latvia under the command of a Canadian Colonel, Cedric Espirot. This is the most multinational of NATO's forward land forces, and the challenge to un-Canadianize the headquarters in order to unite all nations as a single cohesive brigade is immense, but is also an incredible test of
All right, guys, it's about to get heated. It's about to get wild. House of Commons is filling up. Both sides filing in. I hope you guys are ready.
La question est la suivante. The question is the following one. Ms. Gould, seconded by Ms. Bibeau, moves that the debate on government business number 43 not be further adjourned.
Get started, and the House will now proceed to the vote for members participating in person. All those in favor of the motion will please rise.
Ms. Gould.
Ms. Gould.
Mr. Sajjan.
Mr. Sajjan.
Mr. Guilbeault.
Mr. Guilbeault.
Mr. Wilkinson.
Mr. Wilkinson.
Mr. Fraser.
Mr. Fraser.
Ms. Hutchings.
Ms. Hutchings.
So they are voting right now on the bill of temporary cost of living relief. This is the 2-month quote-unquote tax break, I'm pretty sure. This is it right here.
Madame Bibeau.
Madame Petitpas-Taylor.
Madame Petitpas-Taylor.
Mr. Ananda Sangari.
Mr. Ananda Sangari.
Mr. Beach.
Mr. Beach.
Madame Martinez-Ferrada.
Madame Martinez-Ferrada.
Mrs.
So the Liberals across the board are going to vote yes for this. It's going to be very interesting to see what the ends of either side do. The ends being the BLOC and the NDP, because they sit near the end at the aisles there. They sit like back here. So
Mr. May Cambridge.
Mr. Fonseca.
Mr. Fonseca.
Mr. Hardy.
Mr. Hardy.
Mr. Yacono.
Mr. Yacono.
Mr. Nakvi.
Mr. Nakvi.
Mr. Sidhu, Brampton East.
Mr. Sidhu, Brampton East.
Mr. Badaway.
Mr. Badaway.
Mr. Sousa.
Mr. Sousa.
Mr. Maloney.
Mr. Maloney.
Mr. Housefather.
Mr. Housefather.
Mr. Sarai.
Mr. Sarai.
Mr. Kellaway.
Mr. Kellaway.
Ms. Van de
from the Netherlands. Whoa, welcome to the stream. That is far away.
Mr. McDonald Avalon.
Mr. Morrissey.
Mr. Morrissey.
Mr. Shifke.
Mr. Shifke.
Ms. Sidhu Brampton South.
Ms. Sidhu Brampton South.
Mr. Sarbera.
Mr. Sarbera.
Ms. Sepfner.
Ms. Hefner.
Mr. Noor Mohammed.
Mr. Noor Mohammed.
Mr. Chang.
Mr. Chang.
Mrs. Zaid.
Mrs. Zaid.
Mr. Rogers.
Mr. Rogers.
Ms. Yip.
Ms. Yip.
Mr. Lewis Kitchener-Conestoga.
Mr. Lewis Kitchener-Conestoga.
Mr. Van Bynen.
Mr. Van Bynen.
Madame Mendez.
Madame Mendez.
Mr. Ali.
Mr. Ali.
Mr. Chahal.
Mr. Chahal.
Madame Lapointe.
Madame Lapointe.
Ms. Taylor-Roy.
Ms. Taylor-Roy.
Ms. Collins Victoria.
Ms. Collins Victoria.
Ms. Matheson.
Ms. Matheson.
Ms. Sidlout.
Ms. Idlout.
Ms. Gazan.
Ms. Gazan.
Mr. Backrack.
Mr. Backrack.
Mr. Cannings.
Mr. Cannings.
Mr. Bouleris.
Mr. Bouleris.
Mr. Descharlet.
Mr. Desjardins.
Ms. Cirillo.
Ms. Cirillo.
All those opposed to the motion will please rise.
Mr. Bazan.
Mr. Bazan.
Mr. Williams.
Mr. Williams.
Mr. Perkins.
Mr. Perkins.
Mrs. Stubbs.
Mrs. Stubbs.
Miss Landsman.
Miss Landsman.
Miss Lewis Haldeman Norfolk.
Miss Lewis Haldeman Norfolk.
Mrs. Gray.
Mrs. Gray.
Miss Dancho.
So those were members of the NDP standing up for this to pass. The same party that is completely against, or claiming to now be completely against, everything Trudeau has done. Oh my God. None of them are on the same page, and they just continue to lie out of their teeth. This is going to be brutal, guys. It's going to pass.
Mr. Brassard.
Mr. Brassard.
It's
Mrs.
most likely going to
Goodrich.
pass.
Mr. Moore.
Mr. Moore.
Mr. Aitchison.
Unless the bloc actually steps up and doesn't vote it, but I don't know, man.
Mr. Tucker.
Mr. Tucker.
Mr. Canna.
Mr. Canna.
Mrs. Cramp-Nyman.
Mrs. Cramp-Nyman.
Madame Vien.
Madame Vien.
Mrs. Gallant.
Mrs. Gallant.
Mr. Shipley.
Mr. Shipley.
Mr. Muse.
Mr. Muse.
Mr. Redicott.
Mr. Redicott.
Mr. Van Popta.
Mr. Van Popta.
Mr. Waugh.
Mr. Waugh.
Mr. Généreux.
Monsieur Généreux.
Mr. Major.
Mr. Major.
Mr. Davidson.
Mr. Davidson.
Mr. Caputo.
Mr. Caputo.
Mr. Epp.
Mr. Epp.
Miss Rempel Garner.
Ms. Rempel Garner.
Mr. Zimmer.
Mr. Zimmer.
Mr. Cram.
Mr. Cram.
Mr. Tolmie.
Mr. Tolmie.
Mrs. Wagenthal.
Mrs. Wagenthal.
Mr. Albus.
Mr. Albus.
Mr. Bragdon.
Mr. Bragdon.
Mr. Dalton.
Mr. Dalton.
Mr. Nader.
Mr. Nader.
Mrs. Falk, Battleford Lloydminster.
Mrs. Falk, Battleford Lloydminster.
Mr. Weber.
Mr. Weber.
Mr. McGuire.
Mr. McGuire.
Mr. Shields.
Mr. Shields.
Mr. Motts.
Mr. Motts.
Mr. Arnold.
Mr. Arnold.
Mr. Morrison.
Mr. Morrison.
Mr. Soroka.
Mr. Soroka.
Mr. Vidal.
Mr. Vidal.
Mr. Dowdle.
Mr. Dowdle.
Mr. Vierson.
Mr. Vierson.
Mr. Fast.
Mr. Fast.
Mr. Leipert.
Mr. Leipert.
Mr. Kitchen.
Mr. Kitchen.
Mr. Giovanni.
Mr. Giovanni.
Mr. Stewart, Toronto St. Paul's.
Mr. Stewart, Toronto St. Paul's.
Monsieur Terrien.
Monsieur Terrien.
Madame Gill.
Madame Gill.
Madame de Bellefeuille.
Madame
Oh my
Delafay.
God, the bloc are actually coming through? Some of them, not all of them. A couple of them.
Madame Vignola.
Madame Vignola.
Madame.
The NDP thing didn't shock me, but the bloc actually saying what they're gonna do and doing it. That's kind of shocking. Okay, it's currently muted. They are counting the votes, I would assume. Any second now. Guys, you are watching. Okay, so now we have the electronic vote for the members that I would assume did not make it or couldn't make it. Now you get to see each and every individual in the House of Commons and whether they voted yes or no for this. You have the NDP members are voting yes. Liberals, yes. Conservatives, no. Bloc Québécois member, no. Independent member, no. Okay, that's expected. Okay, that's also expected. Okay, yep. Continue. This is the breakdown right now. Okay, another bloc member saying no. So the NDP sided with the Liberals, and the Bloc actually stepped up. The Bloc have actually had enough of the shit. Another one said no, another Bloc member. Another NDP said yes. I wonder how close this is actually going to be. This could be a matter of like 1 or 2 votes. This really could be a matter of a couple votes right here. Another BLOC member saying no. There's Randy. I can't believe Randy. He quote unquote steps down, but it's still voting, huh? Funny how that works. NDP saying yes. More conservatives. No. Yes. Okay. Everything flowing through. Guys, what do you think? Tell me in the chat. What do we got here? What do we got? What do you guys think is going to happen? I'm seeing a lot of yeses. I'm seeing I see an independent yes from Han Dong. Han Dong. That's quite the name. Conservatives saying no. This is typical stuff. Liberals saying yes because they wanted this. They've been pushing it for the past week now. 2 BLOC members saying no. It'll pass. Time is changing. We got pathetic fraud. You think it'll be 179 to 150 as a pass? Randy should have no say to anything. I agree with that, Storm. The guy, quote unquote, stepped down because he claimed he had an indigenous background, an indigenous heritage, and he lied about it. And, quote unquote, allegedly, or however you want to think about this, took millions of dollars from indigenous contracts. And for some reason, he's still allowed to vote. He's still allowed to vote in the House of Commons. That's interesting. He's still an MP. That is true. He is, but he supposedly stepped down. He supposedly stepped away, right? So it's kind of just more lies, more bullshit. That's essentially what it is. More BLOC Quebecois saying no. Randy is their role model. Big bad Jagmeet saying yes, of course. Of course Jagmeet said yes. The guy who, for the past week, or 2 weeks now, has claimed the Liberals aren't fit to lead anymore, and he wants them gone. And look at him, voting yes on this exact thing he pretty much said he was going to start being against. He stepped down from cabinet, not the caucus. Okay, well, I think he should just step down permanently, but that's just me. You get involved in something like that, you probably should go away. That's just me, though. Once again, I hope everybody is having a fantastic day or night. Depending on how this goes, 30 seconds could dictate quite a bit in the next couple of months and afterwards as well. I think the afterwards part is the scary part. That's the part more people should be focused on, because you really don't know what the Liberal government is going to do to try and recoup that money. It could be through the carbon tax. They could implement a new tax. They could just say, we're going to raise everything tenfold. I don't know, guys. I really don't. Okay, here we go. The electronic period. The voting period has closed. I can't even speak. What is going to happen? What is going to happen? Hold the line. Randy should be fired. I agree. Randy should be long gone by now. This is the vote. I just need to make this clear. This is the vote for the 2-month tax break that the Liberals are claiming is a tax break, even though it's not going to be good.
The House electronic voting period has ended.
If members were unable to vote due to technical difficulties, they may now use the raise hand function, and the chair will recognize them.
Recorded as yay.
Ms. Mason,
of course.
Yay pour. Quelqu'un d'autre?
Anyone else?
The table will now compile the results of the vote.
It's going to pass.
177, 177. Nays contre, 148, 143.
Oh, yeah, it passed.
The motion carried.
It passed.
Okay, we'll do that.
Oh, boy. Oh. And Darth Fungus has just entered the chair. Emperor Fungus is here.
Rising on a point of order.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I believe if you seek it, you will find unanimous consent for the following motion: that notwithstanding any standing order, special order, or usual practice, the House now proceed to statements by members, followed by oral questions, and that the usual allotment of time be accorded for each rubric. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
All those opposed to the honourable member moving the motion will please say nay. Agreed. The House has heard the terms of the motion. All those opposed to the motion will please say nay. Carried. It being 2:24, pursuant to order made earlier today, the House will now proceed to statements by members, followed by oral questions. The honourable member from Surrey Newton.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today on behalf of concerned Pakistani Canadian community members.
Guys, I'm not too impressed right now. I'm not gonna lie. I'm not too impressed. If this is going through what you just did, and it gets applied, and this tax break comes in the next 2 months, just prepare for afterwards. Like I said, abuse this quote-unquote tax break. Buy as much as you can. I'm not trying to incite fear or scare anybody, but the Liberal government is known for raising taxes. And after giving a 2-month break, you can only imagine what they're gonna do. Raise taxes, and they're going to do it immensely. They're going to try and recover and recoup millions and millions and millions of lost dollars that they have missed out by cutting GST and HST off of a large portion of product.
Work of the Bruce Oak Recovery Centre in my riding. The centre is a non-profit residential treatment facility located in Winnipeg, founded by Scott and Ann Oak. It provides addiction treatment and recovery services to individuals struggling with substance abuse disorders. And with a 57% success rate, the centre works. I recently spoke with Shane Sturvey Highfield. Shane struggled with addiction since youth.
Oh, and on top of that tax cut, I forgot to mention, they're also going to give you $250. $250 of your own money that you've paid in taxes, and now they're deciding to give back to you as some sort of relief fund. It's an absolute joke. Please do not let this sway you when it comes to voting next year. Please do not look at this as the Liberal government actually caring about you. They've had 10 years to do whatever they please, and only now, when it matters for them the most, have they slapped a piece of duct tape on a collapsing empire.
The honourable member for Vimy. Mr. Speaker, I rise today in celebration of Lebanese Heritage Month, which pays tribute to Lebanese culture and its incredible contributions to Canada with its varied traditions, delicious cuisine, and remarkable contribution to our economy and more. Canadians of Lebanese origin have enriched our society for over 140 years, beginning in Montreal. Today, there are over 200,000 Lebanese Canadians, including 8,000 in my riding of Vimy.
Difficult circumstances and journeys of many Lebanese families who sought new beginnings in Canada, including the challenges of conflict in their homeland. Their courage, determination, and success in Canada inspires us all, and we are grateful for them. Together, let's honor this heritage and our Lebanese Canadian fellow citizens, but also let us all wish and pray that a permanent peace takes a firm hold in Lebanon.
The honourable member for Pierre Boucher, Les Pâtres Verchères.
Yes, not only is it free money, but it's your money. It's your money. They're just giving it back to you guys.
Corner store, founded in 1974 by André Desroches, who also founded the Business People's Association.
And they sit there and they'll pat themselves on the back. They'll go, look what we did for Canadians. We are so great as a government.
La Ressource is much more than a simple corner store where you get milk or a bag of chips or some beer. 25 years ago, they were groundbreakers in stocking their shelves with terroir products, local products, and microbreweries products. So going into there is like going into Alibaba's cave. You can choose beers there like you would choose wine at the liquor store. And
Alibaba's cave.
with Frédéric Desroches, La Ressource is now in its third generation of owners, and it is as involved and committed to the community as it was under his grandfather. Congratulations on 50 years, and long live La Ressource.
The only thing that I've read in recent memory is a celebratory post from a Ford MPP celebrating tearing out bike lanes in the city of Toronto by saying that it's going to make it safer for people on bikes. Where's the data? Really? Let's be clear. Bike lanes save lives. If someone has a problem with their design or their location, take it to our mayor or city councillors. That's why we elect them. It's time that we look at charter cities and how to better protect our cities from this kind of overreach. I ran to make sure that our federal government was a strong partner to the City of Toronto, and we are. Strong partners don't roll over each other's toes. The Ford decision is going to cost lives. It's going to cost taxpayers. It's going to take away an affordable way to get around our city, and it's going to add to traffic. How's that for a lump of coal for the holidays? Bah humbug. So let's stand up for the City of Toronto. Let's stand up for charter cities.
The honourable member from Miramichi Grand Lake.
I'm the proud nephew of Tony Sturgeon. Tony's recent passing brings a deep sadness to our family, along with major change. Tony leaves behind the love of his life, Aunt Christy, and daughters Mandy and Kyla. Our family will be forever grateful that Tony found someone as wonderful as Christy to share his life with. Tony's love for Christy and his daughters was always evident in our family. He was deeply proud of both daughters and was always excited to spend time with his grandchildren. Toronto Maple Leaf fans are loyal for obvious reasons. We are all long-suffering, but few were as loyal as my Uncle Tony. We shared this passion, and it returned every fall, along with the common sorrow in the spring. Tony leaves behind a great legacy of two beautiful daughters, their children and families, a lifetime of good humor, and memories will hold close forever. We will always miss you, Uncle Tony.
The honourable member for London North Centre.
Mr. Speaker, more than 3,000 Canadians live with ALS. One is a constituent. Matthew Brown's courageous battle over the years has inspired me to do more. Mr. Speaker.
My favorite part about the NDP is that they lie so blatantly, and then their actions, they never pull through. So they just continue to make themselves look awful. Their party looks terrible. Their leader, Jagmeet, is not a good leader. He's a very weak leader. When he lashed out at people that called him corrupt while he was leaving Parliament and tried to, push up on the guy and almost fight him, that was pretty pathetic. When he tried to fight Pierre Poilievre in the House of Commons that one day during question period, he lashed out. I think it was the same day, actually, he tried to fight that guy outside. He tried to fight Pierre, and then he tried to fight him. Or maybe it was back-to-back days. One of the two. The NDP, they just continue to make themselves look extremely bad. And, they need to start either pulling through on what they're saying to bring themselves back up, or they just simply need to leave. Because they're not doing anything for anybody other than the Liberal government. They're essentially just a branch of the Liberals. They're just an arm that Trudeau can extend out to and be like, here's whatever you want for a month and a half. Now you're going to give us what we want for the next 5 or so years.
Starting December 14th, children's clothing and toys, restaurant meals, alcoholic beverages.
Right now, it's just statements by members, so they're bringing up whatever they please. They're talking about, hockey teams or art districts and stuff like that. That's typically what they do in statements by members. We will be getting into actual question period very soon. Everything has been delayed about 10, 15 minutes because of this vote, because they wanted to push back the vote until everybody showed up. And sadly, the 2-month quote-unquote tax break has gone through. And I guess we'll see what happens afterwards, guys.
And stand in the way of progress at every turn.
The honourable member from Langley Aldergrove.
After 9 years of this NDP Liberal government, our once safe towns and cities are now rife with crime and chaos thanks to this Liberal Prime Minister's radical catch-and-relief bail policies that allow dangerous people to stay on our streets. Our worsening public record, safety record has been made evident by a recent Fraser Institute study comparing our crime stats to the USA. Well, the numbers are in. Violent crime is up in Canada and now exceeding the United States by 14%. And then there's property crime, also exceeding the USA by a shocking 27%.
No, honestly, I expect the NDP to just, like, step down and leave because they haven't done anything. They really never have. They destroyed Ontario when they got in power years ago, and they are destroying BC right now. BC is probably one of the wildest places to live, specifically Vancouver. It's an actual nightmare.
Conservative government that is going to focus on public safety and bring back safe streets. Thank you.
The honourable member from Ottawa Centre.
Speaker, I rise today to remember Robert Smythe, a true pillar of Centretown who passed away on November 15th. For over 50 years, Robert dedicated his life to preserving the character and history of our community. As the founding editor of the Centretown Buzz, Robert captured the stories and struggles of our neighborhood with passion and care. He shared downtown Ottawa's history and architecture in a way that brought it to life, championing the preservation of not just heritage buildings, but also the modernist and brutalist structures that reflect our city's evolution. He was a tireless advocate for affordable housing, a community builder, and a passionate pedestrian who knew every corner of Centretown. His memory will forever echo through downtown's streets, its cherished buildings, and people's stories that define our community. May Robert rest in peace. Thank you.
The honourable member from Saskatoon West.
Mr. Speaker, after 9 years, the NDP Liberals are not worth the cost. Taxes are up, costs are up, crime is up, and time is up. And now they've broken Canada's immigration system. Conservatives have learned there are over 3 million people in Canada that need to leave by December of next year, and the government does not have a plan. When we pressed the minister on this at committee, he simply shrugged his shoulders and said he expected people to leave voluntarily. At the same time, he also expects asylum claimants to grow. He's talking out of both sides of his mouth. The facts are, student demonstrators have said they will not leave voluntarily, and asylum claims are growing. But the NDP Liberal government hopes this problem will just go away. Well, hope is not a management plan. The truth is, the NDP Liberals have no plan to ensure these 3 million temporary residents actually leave Canada. They don't have a way to know if they've left. They won't even prevent them from staying. They won't stop them from claiming asylum. They won't even control our borders. Simply put, the NDP Liberals broke our immigration system and don't know how to fix it. Mr. Speaker, where is the plan?
The honourable member from Brandon Souris.
Speaker, more and more Canadians are realizing the true role of the NDP leader and their entire caucus in keeping the Liberal government in power and shielding them from an election. Even after President Trump's unjustified threat of a 25% tariff on Canada's already fragile economy, the NDP Liberal coalition continues to defend their harmful carbon tax, a tax that costs the average person in Manitoba $693 and over $900 in some other provinces. No matter what the NDP Liberals say, the Independent Parliamentary Budget Officer made it clear the carbon tax makes most Canadians poorer. Yes. Unfortunately, the NDP leader doesn't care. Instead of voting with Conservatives to express non-confidence in this government and trigger an election, he is focused on securing his pension, and is prepared to quadruple the carbon tax. It's time to let Canadians choose a strong Prime Minister who will defend our economy. Let's fire this Prime Minister and call a carbon tax election.
The honourable member for Vancouver Granville.
Mr. Speaker, our government knows Canadians work hard and that many are still feeling just barely more comfortable with their finances. That's why last week we introduced the new Working Canadians Rebate, a tax-free payment of $250 that will go directly to more than 18 million Canadians. If you worked in 2023 and earned up to $150,000, this rebate is for you. Whether it's to help pay bills, buy groceries, or save for the future, this is real support for Canadians who work hard every day to meet their needs and their families. This rebate is designed to recognize the efforts of Canadians, to give them a helping hand when they need it most. In addition to the tax holiday on essentials like groceries, snacks, and children's clothing, our government is providing Canadians with significant savings and real relief at the checkout. So, Mr. Speaker, let's go get it. Let's get to it. I hope all MPs will support this bill.
Griesbaum. Boyle Street, Bissell Center, TWOW Outreach Collective, 4B Harm Reduction, Water Warriors, Smile Yeg, Bear Claw, Beaver Hills House, Hope Mission, and Reach Edmonton. These are the names of the frontline organizations in Edmonton helping our neighbors survive. Houselessness is a crisis in Edmonton. Over the past few weeks, 4 people have already frozen to death. Things are so bad that last winter, over 100 people living on the streets lost a limb due to frostbite. The majority of these are Indigenous. These harrowing statistics, Mr. Speaker, put the work of Edmonton's local organizations into focus. Compassionate, understanding care, supportive housing for those who need it most, wraparound services that go far beyond just putting a roof over people's heads. But these organizations need help. I urge the government to work with provincial and municipal partners to ensure that the people who support Edmonton's most vulnerable have the resources they need. Together, Mr. Speaker, we can end poverty and we can end houselessness.
Houselessness?
The honourable member for Salaberry-sur-Roi. Mr. Speaker, the University of Quebec in Montreal has just pulled off a masterstroke by appointing Pauline Marois as Chancellor, another historic first for the woman who was the first woman to be elected Premier of Quebec. Of all her impressive service for Quebec, Ms. Marois says what she loved best was being Minister of Education because that's where she could make the biggest difference. And that she did. By creating the network of public childcare centers, she made a major contribution to Quebec women achieving one of the highest employment rates in the world. At a time when UQAM is facing new challenges.
Wait, are you for real? Houselessness is the new term because homeless is... It's the same thing! It's the same thing!
And wishing to grow is the right person in the right place.
Please tell me, please say it ain't so.
Marois, and long live the Chancellor.
The honourable member for Flamborough-Glanbrook.
Mr. Speaker, after 9 years of these Liberals, life has never been so unaffordable.
This is wild. Sheltered list. Like, oh my god, man. They just gotta keep moving the goalpost farther and farther, don't they?
Even his own MPs are fed up. The Liberal member for Hamilton East Stony Creek called the plan incomprehensible and revealed that he's been threatened with consequences for speaking out. He told the Toronto Star, quote, "It says a lot about our government is at this point right now, and it says a lot about some of the shackles that have been put around MPs," unquote. The Prime Minister silences anyone who dares to disagree. Canadians deserve better than Liberal hypocrisy. It's a 2-month tax trick today to distract from their plan to quadruple the carbon tax. No wonder the Liberal MP for Hamilton East Stony Creek calls this plan incomprehensible. Common sense Conservatives will axe the tax for everyone, everywhere, for good.
The honourable member for St. John's East.
Raindrops on roses and whiskers on kittens, children's scarves and warm woolen mittens, books and newspapers tied with strings. These are a few of my favorite things. Restaurant meals and crisp apple strudels, snacks and candy and schnitzel with noodles, toys and board games and the joy that they bring. These are a few of my favorite things. And these things will be exempted from GST starting December 14th, Mr. Speaker. This tax break will give Canadians more money in their pockets during the holidays, a time when the costs go up for many families. When the dog bites, when the CPC stings, I simply remember my favorite things, and soon will be exempt from GST. The good news for Canadians, Mr. Speaker, I encourage members opposite to vote in favour of this tax break and let Canadians have more of their hard-earned money.
Hey, question period. Here we go.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition. The Prime Minister is weak, and he's lost control of our borders. He opened Roxham Road, and he kept it open a year after the Americans offered to close it. He invited at least 700 foreign students by implicitly promising that they would be able to stay here permanently and who will now have to leave. And he lost 500,000 people. What is his plan to reestablish order at the borders and prevent American tariffs? The Honourable Minister of Public Services and Procurement. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As our colleague knows very well, the relationship with the United States is the most important relationship that we have with any other country. When it comes to security and when it comes to the economy, we work very well with the Americans, and we have for many years now, for many decades. And he also knows very well that 18 months ago, we signed a new third-party agreement, which the United States have celebrated since then, and which are going to bring back to the attention of our colleague. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition. Since the Prime Minister enjoys invading provincial jurisdiction, he's lost control of his own jurisdiction. He is incompetent when it comes to federal jurisdiction, like borders. It's the most important federal jurisdiction. In fact, now the provincial premiers have lost confidence in this Prime Minister. The Premier of Quebec is sending Quebec's provincial police force to defend the borders. Alberta's Premier is doing the same. Ontario's Premier is saying exactly the same things. How can we trust this Prime Minister? The Honourable Minister of Public Services and Procurement. Our colleague is talking about trust and jurisdiction. I answered this question a couple of minutes ago. If there's something that he can control, Mr. Speaker, it's he could ask for his security clearance so that he could protect his own caucus. He's not able to protect himself and his own caucus, and that's an issue of trust, Mr. Speaker. The trust of parliaments and the trust of Canadians depends on the ability of the Leader of the Official Opposition to control his agenda and to ask for a security clearance.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
This weak Prime Minister has lost control. He's lost control of immigration, lost control of our borders. And now we're facing massive threats to our economy. Right now, there are as many as 500,000 people here illegally. There are 700,000 students who came here with the implicit promise they'd be able to stay forever. And now they're being told they have to leave with the temptation that they might head south for the much stronger economy than we have here, which would provoke a massive retaliatory tariff. So what's the plan to reverse all the damage the Prime Minister's done?
The Honourable Minister for Immigration, Citizenship and Refugees.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Hundreds of thousands of people come to this country every year and then leave. They're called tourists. Hundreds of thousands of people come here as temporary residents and then they leave. Some become permanent residents. There is a plan to achieve that. They will migrate into permanent residence.
Yeah, only some, huh?
Here, and when they refuse to do so, they will be removed. But you can't make this up, Mr. Speaker. What the member opposite, the Leader of the Opposition, is doing with the member of Edmonton Millwoods is going around to these people, pandering to them, promising them to have visas and promising not to deport them. Deport them. That is highly irresponsible and it's incompetent.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, that member hallucinates almost as badly as his weak leader, who refuses to stand and answer for his own border failures. Let's look at his record. He opened Roxham Road. He kept it open for a year longer than the Americans required. He put out a tweet saying, "Welcome to Canada," inviting people to come here illegally. According to that minister's department, there are 500,000 people here illegally, all of whom could be tempted to go south of the border, provoking a massive retaliatory response. So once again, what's the plan to fix what he broke?
The Honourable Minister for Immigration, Citizenship and Refugees.
Speaker, we'll tweet out the video of him pandering to people, entertaining false hope, promising visas to everyone, promising they won't get deported. That's highly incompetent. Worse than that, Mr. Speaker, is he's refusing to get his security clearance. That is irresponsible for any purported leader of this country, any responsible person in politics. He needs to grow a pair, get the briefing.
They are all stoned, aren't they? They're all just a bunch of druggies. Oh, Darth Fungus with the mute. Ladies and gentlemen, we have the first mute of question period. Question period has actually been delayed about 30 minutes because of the vote earlier.
There's a large, a large flexibility that the Speaker gives, of course, to the language that's used in here. But I think that might be beyond the border. I'm going to ask the Honourable Minister if he could just withdraw those words.
Mr. Speaker, I withdraw those words. On a day like this, I would say he's all flannel and no axe.
What is going on?
The opposition.
Mr. Speaker, once again shows the erratic, out-of-control government we have over there. His Prime Minister is hiding from questions. His Minister is losing control of his words and his mind. This is a government that is falling to pieces. The Prime Minister has lost control of the border, lost control of immigration, lost control of our finances, and now lost control of his caucus, who are saying that they've been intimidated into voting in favor of his tiny tax trick. He's lost control, but he's holding on to power.
The Honourable Leader of the Government in the House of Commons.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I don't know what the member is talking about. On this side of the House, we can have conversations, we can have debates, and we don't get shut down from speaking like the members opposite, Mr. Speaker. But, Mr. Speaker, let's talk about today. We are moving forward with a GST cut for every single Canadian. And what have we heard from the Leader of the Opposition? He's opposed to tax cuts, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, he's all talk, no walk. He's not there for Canadians. On this side of the House, we're going to support Canadians and let our members have debates and conversations. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Order. Order. The Honourable Member for La Prairie. For weeks now, the Bloc Québécois has been asking the Liberals to increase resources at the borders. Weeks that they've just come back with the condescension that they're so well known for, that they have a plan. But listen, yesterday the Prime Minister announced to his colleagues, the premiers, that he was going to do what the Bloc has been suggesting for a week now, increase resources at the border. You know, up to last night, there was no plan and there were no resources at the border. So why do the Liberals always have to wake up at the last possible minute? The Honourable Minister of Public Services and Procurement. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Our colleague knows very well that the relationship with the United States is the most important relationship that we have when it comes to security, economics, and the border. And that's why for many decades now we've worked well and actively with the Americans, and we've done that in recent years, particularly under Mr. Trump's administration. Mr. Trudeau, rather, the Prime Minister, had an excellent meeting yesterday with the premiers, and it's on the basis of ongoing collaboration that we will deal with the issues raised in that conversation. The Honourable Member for La Prairie. Well, better late than never, the Liberals have finally realized they need to increase resources at the border, but they're still unable to tell us exactly when, how much, and how. And that's really serious because in just a couple of months, Donald Trump is going to impose tariffs on our entire economy. They only have 2 months left to fix the leaky border. And until last night, they continued to claim they didn't think there was a problem. Now that they've finally seen the light, can they please explain what the details of their plan are? The Honourable Minister of Global Affairs. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As you know, and Canadians know, borders are very important, and it's in the interest of the Americans that they be protected. It's the interest of Canadians that they protected. And that's why we are working together on this question. I had a conversation with Premier Legault this morning, and I also spoke with Quebec's International Relations Minister. I've also had the opportunity to speak with a number of influential Republican and Democrat senators in the United States who are all allies so that we can work together to make sure that our two countries are protected. The Honourable Member for Rosemont-La Petite Patrie. Mr. Speaker, as we see every Christmas when things get going again, the Liberals woke up just the other day and said, hey, we're going to send out $250 checks. But the NDP noted that they forgot a lot of people, seniors, persons with disabilities, people who aren't able to work. The Liberals panicked, and so they pushed that measure back. But, you know, the real question here is, are they going to fix their measure so that they can help people who really need it? The Honourable Minister. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, today is a great day, Mr. Speaker, because we are going to be voting with the support of the NDP for a tax holiday for all Canadians, including seniors. And we'd like to thank them because on the other side of the House, what we're seeing is a Grinch who's going to stay a Grinch and who doesn't want to vote for a tax holiday. So I'd like to thank the NDP because they have a heart like we do for all Canadians, but we're going to continue working with them to make sure that we support all Canadians across the country, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Victoria.
But they're not supporting all Canadians. The Liberals are letting Canadians down. Almost everyone is cutting back. Life is expensive, and that is especially true for students, seniors, and people with disabilities. And the Liberals' plan? Excluding them from the $250 rebate. Even the Liberals' own MPs think this is absurd. And the Conservatives, they want to give tax breaks to billionaires like Galen Weston, but won't give a tax break to everyday Canadians. When the Conservatives show you who they are, believe them. So will the Liberals fix their botched rebate, yes or no?
The Honourable Minister for Tourism and Economic Development.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to thank my colleague for her question. And, you know, we introduced for the first time a Canada disability benefit. You know, my brother has a disability. Ours is the first government that has put in place direct help for people with a physical disability. Mr. Speaker, the $250 check that we're going to send out, it's a check that we want to send out to workers. And coming from a party that has always claimed to stand up for workers, it seems a bit ironic that they're against it. That having been said, we think that 1 million seniors who work will have access to that check, and also persons with disabilities who are working, Mr. Speaker.
Then I have the Honourable Member from Thornhill.
After doubling the cost of housing, adding an inflationary carbon tax to everything that Canadians buy, and giving us the highest levels of debt in the G7, the Prime Minister's plan is a temporary, tiny 2-month tax trick. But not even small businesses are fooled. The Canadian Federation of Independent Business says that only 4% of small businesses expect a sales boost because of the latest last-ditch effort for the Prime Minister to save his own job. If he's so sure about his plan, why doesn't he call a carbon tax election and let Canadians decide? Right.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
With respect, the member ought to look at what the Retail Council of Canada has said on the matter, what Restaurants Canada has said on the matter as well, Mr. Speaker. Small business owners in my community across the country will benefit as a result of this tax cut. It's exactly what it is, a tax cut for workers, a tax cut for families. What's also surprising, Mr. Speaker, and I just heard the name, they talked about Aaron O'Toole. That's exactly right. He put this initiative on the table in the summer of 21.
Oh god, Aaron O'Toole would have been such a bad PM. I'm so happy we didn't actually vote him, or he actually didn't get in. Like, I know that sounds bad that Trudeau won over him, but like, I voted for him, and I still thought he was a fucking terrible leader. Aaron O'Toole was just no charisma, no intelligence behind that man.
Yeah, tax cut. It's a distraction before a much, much bigger permanent tax hike. Even his own Liberal MPs are now opposing this. The member from Hamilton East Stony Creek says that he was threatened with, quote, consequences if he voted against it. Rather than threatening his own MPs, muzzling them like he's accused others of doing, we have a weakened Prime Minister terrified of facing Canadians. So if he's so sure about his own leadership, if he's so sure about his own plan, why won't he allow his own MPs to have a free vote on this one today?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Housing, Infrastructure and Communities.
Workers going for groceries, Mr. Speaker, who want to eat out, who want to buy gifts during Christmas, Mr. Speaker. That's who's on our mind, Mr. Speaker. Families who want to buy diapers for their kids, who want to buy kids' clothes. That young family who's excited about a new child coming into the family, Mr. Speaker. Car seats are expensive. There's a tax savings on that too, Mr. Speaker. The Leader of the Opposition supported this initiative in 2021, but doesn't want to now because it's a Liberal initiative. Will the real Pierre Poilievre stand up in this House of Commons?
The Honourable Member from Calgary, Forest Lawn.
Whoa! Another mute from Darth Fungus.
Sorry, I did not hear the Honourable Member, and I'm going to ask members to, if members were able to hold their voices unless recognized by the Speaker, it'd be easier for the Speaker to hear a statement. The Honourable Member apparently had mentioned the name of another Honourable Member. I'll ask the Honourable Member to just rise and use the name of...
It's an honest mistake, Mr. Speaker. I would show.
The Honourable Member from Calgary Forest.
Whoa, it got really loud there.
Temporary 2-month tax tricks won't save this desperate Prime Minister. After doubling housing costs, doubling the national debt, doubling food bank usage, now he's blaming Canadians for not feeling the vibe of this pricey gimmick. Now he's even threatening his own Liberal MP from Hamilton East Stony Creek for not supporting this vote-buying scheme. Instead of threatening MPs to take cents off Skittles, call a carbon tax election now so common-sense Conservatives can axe the tax for good.
The Honourable Leader of the Government in the House of Commons.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, I know the Leader of the Opposition knows a thing or two about threatening his own MPs, because if they don't speak in 3-word slogans, we never hear from them again. But, Mr. Speaker, what I can say is that on this side of the House, we are excited to deliver a tax cut for Canadians. And for the mom who has to buy diapers and groceries and a car seat, this is meaningful for her, Mr. Speaker. Who it's not meaningful for is the Leader of the Opposition, because when it comes to supporting everyday Canadians, he would rather support himself than give them a break over the holidays. That's so disappointing, and Canadians across this country are disappointed in him. Thank you.
The Honourable Member from Calgary Forest Lawn.
The only thing they're cutting is moms that have to cut down on the nutritious food that they can give to their kids and sending them into food bank lines. And after this temporary tax trick is done, they're going to jack up the carbon tax on April 1st, making everything more expensive. And anyone who doesn't believe in this Prime Minister's radical plan, he threatens them with consequences. This inflationary vote-buying scheme will add another $6 billion to this Prime Minister's growing deficit. Instead of taking chump change off chocolates, call a carbon tax election now so we can axe the tax for good.
The Honourable Government House Leader in the House of Commons.
Mr. Speaker, the GST that we are proposing to remove is going to be removed on essential items like groceries, like children's clothing, like diapers and car seats. Mr. Speaker, I don't know if the honourable colleague has children, but if he did, he would know just how expensive those items are for Canadians. And for Canadians who have to buy...
Wow, Karina is finally realizing, and we watched this earlier, she said the exact same thing during the reporter scrums. She's realizing how expensive things are. Wow. Good job, Karina. It seems like you've maybe partially woken up a bit. Holy hell.
And the honourable member from South Shore St. Margaret's to please not take the floor unless recognized by the Speaker.
The honourable member for Bellechasse, Lévis. The Prime Minister is desperately trying to create a distraction, Mr. Speaker. He's trying to trick voters with a 2-month tax trick, but everyone can see through what he's doing. Earlier today, somebody came to my riding office to criticize what the Prime Minister is trying to do. This government is uniting Canadians against them, Mr. Speaker. Will they give Canadians election so that they can elect common sense Conservatives to give hope back to Canadians? The Honourable Minister of Tourism and Economic Development. Once again, Mr. Speaker, today is a great day, Mr. Speaker. Canadians across the country, Quebecers, are going to have access to a tax holiday. I don't understand how my colleague from across the way doesn't want to support Canadians. Their hidden program, Mr. Speaker, is to make cuts to housing, among other things, Mr. Speaker. It's very clear that they don't want to support Quebecers. They don't want them to have a tax cut at the toughest time of the year, Mr. Speaker. The Honourable Member for Bellechasse, Lévis. Listen, Conservatives will cut taxes and axe the GST on new homes. That'll mean savings up to $50,000 on the purchase of a new home, and it'll create 30,000 new housing starts, Mr. Speaker. That's a real idea to bring a long-term solution to problems created by this government. Canadians are smart. They can see what's going on. They're going to pay the price for this government. That's why we need elections now, Mr. Speaker. I will ask the Leader of the Official Opposition, please, to sit down. The Honourable Minister of Housing,
the heckling is wild.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Honestly, it's difficult to accept that question from the Conservative Party because in her province, in Quebec, we have signed an agreement with the province to build over 8,000 new affordable housing units with a major investment with $1.8 billion. That's a successful agreement that's in place now. The Conservative Party's position is to cut that agreement, to cut this program that's going to build affordable housing. That's not acceptable, Mr. Speaker. It's not an acceptable position, Mr. Speaker. The Honourable Member for Shefford. The government tabled its bill on the GST and set aside the $250 checks that they promised to just about everyone except for seniors and except for those who are the most vulnerable. They should take this opportunity to take a step back and seriously ask themselves what their priorities are. This government is ready to spend $6 billion to buy votes, but they're refusing to improve OAS for 65 to 74-year-old seniors. That would fix the injustice that they're suffering from right now, and it would cost 2 times less than this gift. Will they give royal sanction to C-319 instead of trying to buy votes? The Honourable Minister of Tourism and Economic Development for the Regions. Mr. Speaker, all I'm seeing today is, it's not boat vying. I want to make sure that Quebecers and Canadians have the opportunity to buy essential products during the holiday season. What I don't understand is how the BLOC Québécois can't support a measure that's going to directly help not only all Quebecers, but also seniors. Mr. Speaker.
I don't know what she does on a day-to-day basis, but she looks like she gets no sleep at all. Like zero.
That they are blackmailing us. Order. The member for Shefford. Now, This is, becoming a habit for this government, forgetting seniors. They're saying, look, we've done enough for them, so nothing else, too bad. But there are seniors who won't even be able to benefit from the GST holiday because all of their income is going to cover their basic needs. The government could act if they're able to give $250 to just about everyone, just to show how generous they are. Well, then they'd be able to spend $6 billion. And if they're able to spend $6 billion, to buy votes, well, they could invest $3 billion in OAS instead of giving money to lots of people who don't need it. Why not simply improve OAS? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Where was the BLOC when we increased pensions for seniors over 75? They voted against it. Where was the BLOC when we increased the guaranteed income supplement by 10%? And, that's, for the most vulnerable seniors. Where were they for the Canada Dental Program? They voted against seniors in all those cases, Mr. Speakers. Where was the BLOC? Well, they simply voted against all those measures. The Honourable Member for Shefford. Well, it's pretty clear what Liberal values are. Giving money to a couple that makes $300,000 a year, but giving nothing to seniors. They think that that is fair. The Liberals said the Conservatives are marking political points by having no sense of social justice and no solidarity for those who are having a hard time making ends meet. So we should do the same thing. It must be working. If it works for them, it'll work for us. The government needs to get its values straight. On the one hand, there's their $250 check that no party here agrees with. And on the other side, there's C-319, which would improve pensions for seniors, and all parties agree that it should be passed. Why aren't they making the right choice? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. Thanks, Mr. Speaker. I would invite the Bloc Québécois to go speak to their constituents, to look them in the eyes, and every time they say that they want to increase pensions for seniors aged 64 to 75, but they should explain why they voted against all the measures for seniors in Quebec that we put in place. They didn't want the improved GIS. They didn't want the dental plan. They didn't want anything for seniors, Mr. Speaker. So they're saying one thing on the one hand, and they should say the same thing on the other hand.
The Honourable Member for Mission, Matsqui, Fraser Canyon.
Mr. Speaker, because the NDP Liberals are trying to fool Canadians with a 2-month tax trick, small businesses are being forced and are scrambling to reprogram their point-of-sales machines and to find the time and money to pay for these changes. It is a shame the Minister of Small Business knew and did not care that this tax trick would hurt the very businesses she purports to help. We all know an election is coming. Can we simply stop with the desperation and call for a carbon tax election today?
The Honourable Minister for Small Businesses.
Mr. Speaker, the only thing that member and his party can offer small businesses are slogans on repeat, cuts to programs that are essential, and cuts. So, Mr. Speaker, our tax break is not just good for small businesses, it's good for their customers. This tax break isn't just helping families, it's also supporting the entire community and boosting their neighborhood independent grocery stores, restaurants, retailers, and small businesses that power our local economy. CRA has provided further guidance on this today, which will help support small businesses, and small businesses can call the CRA hotline to get further support. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Bay of Quinte.
Mr. Speaker, 40% of Canada's economy is tied to our relationship and trade with the U.S. But after 9 years, we have no softwood lumber deal. And what's happened? Tariffs have doubled, and they're set to double again if we have a first increase but a second if Trump gets his way and we don't fix the border. After 9 years, Mr. Speaker, we have lost 90,000 jobs in softwood lumber, 40,000 each in Ontario, Quebec alone. The last Prime Minister solved this in 79 days. It's been 3,311 days. Where's the plan for softwood lumber?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we will always stand up for forestry workers and our lumber industry. We stood up for Canada when the U.S. imposed aluminum and steel tariffs on us. What did the Conservatives said? They urged us to back down and capitulate. When we renegotiated NAFTA back in 2018, we stood strong and protected Canada's economy, while the Conservatives asked us to capitulate. We have a proven track record when it comes to negotiating, Mr. Speaker. We will continue to protect Canadian workers and Canadian industry. Thank you.
The honourable member for Bay of Quinte.
Mr. Speaker, there's no Team Canada when the plan is to pile on taxes, make energy and production more expensive, and sideline our Canadian industry on the global stage. What kind of team has no game plan after 9 years, has lost 90,000 softwood lumber jobs, got kicked out of CUSMA negotiations, and sat on the sidelines when Mexico overcame Canada for the USA's #1 trading partner? But here's a Canada First plan. Axe the tax, scrap the cap on oil and gas production, and fix softwood lumber. Why doesn't the Prime Minister use that common sense Canada First plan?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister for International Trade.
Mr. Speaker, the U.S. is a very important partner to our economy and to our relationships with the rest of the world. When you talk about trade, we have $1.3 trillion of trade last year with the U.S., which is a record since we renegotiated NAFTA in 2018. Mr. Speaker, we will continue to be at the table with a Team Canada approach as we continue to protect Canadian businesses and workers. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I ask the honourable member from Fort McMurray Cold Lake to please not take the floor unless recognized by the Speaker. The honourable member for Nunavut.
Okaktitiyi, 3 First Nations children have died since January due to this government's non-compliance with Jordan's Principle. The Liberals are actively fighting against the Human Rights Tribunal's orders and allowing First Nations children to die while in care. There are over 40,000 Jordan's Principle requests in the backlog. Liberals are not even trying to fix this. When will the Liberals stop fighting First Nations children and uphold First Nations rights to care?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Mr. Speaker, we care deeply about First Nations children. Jordan's Principle ensures that First Nations children can access the care they need when they need it, regardless of where they live. Since 2016, the ISC has funded approximately $7.8 million products, services, and supports for First Nations children. The number of requests has grown exponentially over the years, and we're increasing funding so ISC can meet the demand. All governments need to do their part to keep First Nations children safe, healthy, and supported.
The border will balance itself. Yes, it will.
The latest horrifying story involving the airline's mistreatment of people with disabilities. Air Canada failed to secure a brain cancer patient in a wheelchair. She fell out and was left bleeding and bruised. We're talking about a failure to protect people's safety and dignity. We're talking about a failure to uphold their basic human rights, and yet, despite dozens of stories like these, people with disabilities have seen zero action from this government. Either these Liberals don't think things in the air sector have gotten bad enough yet to act, or they simply don't care. Which one is it?
Good
question.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Transport.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the member for the question. Mr. Speaker, this government takes accessibility very seriously, ensuring that all passengers are treated with dignity. In May, for example, we had a summit that listened and learned from those that have accessibility issues, and of course recommendations came out of those meetings to ensure that we work with the airlines and, quite frankly, Mr. Speaker, demand that they address the issues as the member has brought forward. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Good answer.
The honourable member for Humber Valley Black Creek.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I continue to hear a lot of noise from the members opposite about affordability, but no real solutions. Last week, our government made an exciting announcement to support Canadians over this holiday season. Would the minister share?
The honourable member for Humber River Black Creek can start from the top, please.
Mr. Speaker, I continue to hear a lot of noise from the members opposite about affordability, but no real solutions. Last week, the government made an exciting announcement to support Canadians over this holiday season. Would the minister share more details about our government's plan to put more money in the pockets of Canadians?
You don't know your own plan?
It's an energy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to thank the honourable member for the question. We know that Canadians need more support these days, and that is why we introduced the Canada Child Benefit, lifting hundreds of thousands of Canadian children out of poverty. We cut childcare costs by 50% to help families, and we cut taxes for small business. And now we are giving all Canadians a tax break. We're eliminating the GST on essential goods for 2 months to support Canadians through the holidays. This means groceries, this means children's clothes, and more will be tax-free, so Canadians will have more money in their pockets. Conservatives oppose this just as they want to cut all kinds of supports for Canadians. While they play political games, we are working for Canadians.
The honourable member for Calgary Shepherd.
Canada's 3 million temporary migrants do not appear poised to leave voluntarily. That's the headline from a major Canadian newspaper. The immigration minister naively expects that they'll leave voluntarily. Migrant advocates admit they have no such plans. This sets the stage for mass overstays and more illegal border crossings into the United States. This strains our relations with the newly elected U.S. administration, now threatening a 25% tariff if we don't secure our border. What is the Prime Minister's plan to enforce the laws and ensure that people who need to leave do so?
The Honourable Minister for Immigration, Citizenship and Refugees.
First, Mr. Speaker, the members opposite can get their facts straight. They float around numbers, 3 million, 5 million. They actually don't know what they're talking about in response to their own order paper question. I hear them heckling me, but who they really should be heckling is the leader of the opposition, who is pandering to all these groups, promising visas to everyone and not to deport anyone. That's not responsible. He really needs to grow up if he's going to be responsible. Thank you.
And I ask the honourable member from Grand Prairie Mackenzie, please not to take the floor unless recognised by the Speaker. The honourable member from Calgary Shepherd.
Mr. Speaker, the minister had no answers at committee when I asked him the same questions. He doesn't know his numbers because he has no plan. It's really simple. The lack of a plan threatens the integrity of our immigration system. It risks significant diplomatic damage with this newly incoming U.S. administration. Are they deploying more police to the border? They don't know. Are they deploying advanced technology, and are they using it for border surveillance? They don't know. Are they going to use CBSA with more resources, more agents on the border? They don't know. YouTube videos aren't enough. Will the Prime Minister present a Made in Canada First plan that will make sure that everybody that's required to leave will actually do so?
Hear, hear. It's funny that they think that they're going to go home. Huh. They're protesting in the street right now, trying to stay.
Order. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister for Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, it seems the Conservatives are a little nervous about me responding, probably because I'm going to point out the fact that they cut over 1,000 jobs from CBSA. They were warned that their cuts would lead to more guns, more human trafficking, more drugs entering our border. But what did we do on this side of the House? We reversed those cuts. We invest in our police services. As a result, we've seen an increase of 600% more misrepresentation in investigations happening, and a decrease of migrants entering the border through the south by 50% because investments work.
And I'm now bleeding out my ears because she just yelled the entire time.
Hear how nervous I am, Mr. Speaker. Well, after 9 years of incompetence on immigration, the Prime Minister has no plan to protect our borders. Imagine only 2 days before President Trump's threats, 16 people were arrested trying to cross our border illegally, and many have also crossed into the U.S. since the beginning of 2024. What's the Prime Minister's plan to put Canadians first, protect our borders and our jobs? The Honourable Minister of Global Affairs. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There is no more important relationship than that of Canada and the U.S. worldwide. And that's why we always have to invest more in this relationship when we know that Canadians want to make sure we protect their interests. And that's why
look who it is. It's Melanie.
The border is very important, as is security. as it is for the United
Melanie, the other day, just figured out how expensive butter prices are for the first time. Isn't that funny? Guess who controls butter prices? Oh, right, the government.
The Honourable Member from Mégantic-Les Mr. Speaker, we're here because they have created chaos and disorder in our immigration system at the borders. After 9 years, it's clear this Prime Minister is too weak to face Donald Trump. In 2016, he opened up our borders to the world after promising the Canadian dream. All of these people have to go back to their homes. How will he ensure that none of them will immigrate illegally to the U.S.? There's no plan to protect our borders. When will he trigger an election so we can have a strong leader that will put Canada first?
The
Honourable Minister. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we know full well we have to protect our border, and that's why, with the Biden administration in the past, we were able to conclude a safe third country agreement. We will also reach an agreement with the future U.S. administration. It's in our interest and in theirs, and this government's as well. We have this experience with the Trump administration. So rather than doing petty politics on the backs of Canadians, we're going to work together, and it's together we'll be able to come out on top of this. The Honourable Member for Joliette. The GST vacation is a $1.6 billion gift to people who don't need it. It's a reward for spending. Low-income seniors won't see a big difference, nor will minimum wage workers or families who receive Christmas baskets. But it does pay off for those who have reservations at top restaurants or buy their New Year's Eve champagne by the case. How can the Liberals and the NDP subsidize the spending of the rich while abandoning those who are tightening their belts this Christmas? The Honourable Minister of Tourism. Mr. Speaker, I'm a member in a riding where people often, at the end of the month, have to go buy their food at Dollarama. So when they minimize the impact of the measures
So, what does that tell you about your government, sweetheart?
of Canadians and Quebecers, it means they don't understand people who live in a very vulnerable way. We want to give them a break, a tax break that will allow them to have a better holiday season. And I don't understand how the BLOC won't vote in favor of this measure. The Honourable Member for Joliette. Food isn't taxed, so it's not a good example. The GST vacation also puts our SMEs at a disadvantage. Walmart and Best Buy don't mind paying to have their systems adapted and the GST removed, but our small businesses can afford to lose thousands of dollars in adaptation or go through the headache of sorting out which products are taxed and which aren't. Some have told us that it's more profitable to close for 2 months. It's not our small businesses that should have to pay the price when the Liberals and the NDP want to buy votes. Will they at least compensate SMEs? The Honourable
For small businesses.
Mr. Speaker, this tax holiday will help many Canadians and also give small businesses a lift as well. Restaurants Canada has said this measure is a great victory for the restaurant industry, and it expects that our tax break will increase sales, which will bring in $1 million in additional revenue for restaurants. This tax break will help a greater number of people to go to small businesses, and which will boost revenue and our economy.
The Honourable Member from Haldimand Norfolk.
Mr. Speaker, a new study from the Fraser Institute has shown that that violent and property crime rates in Canada are exceeding those in the United States. In 2014, before this Prime Minister took office, crime rates were lowest. Now violent crime is up 43.8%, which is 14% higher than in the United States. Similarly, our property crime rates are up 27.5% higher than in the United States. When will this Prime Minister admit that he should abandon his failed soft on crime policies?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister for Public Safety.
While Conservatives use skewed data to talk down Canada, we're actually investing in the brave police who do this hard work every single day. And as a result of those investments, we're seeing massive success in our police services. For example, October 31st, the RCMP announced the largest, most sophisticated drug seizure with over 95 million of lethal doses of meth and fentanyl, because that's what investments make while Conservatives talk down Canada.
Yeah, doing a great job there, aren't you?
That these statistics are all in our head, yet the data clearly reveals that Canada has become a much more dangerous place under this Prime Minister. Since 2015, violent crime is up 50%, and gun crime is up 116%.
Those are numbers.
Since that has happened, we have seen no urgency from this Prime Minister. Where is the urgency? When will he admit that his dangerous soft-on-crime policies has made Canada unsafe, and now Canadians are paying the price?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, I think it's safe to say we don't want to know what's in that member's head. But on this side of the House, we are actually investing in the RCMP. We work with police right across this country, and as a result, we're seeing some of the largest drug and gun seizures in this country's history. Conservatives talk a big game, but what they did is they cut to the guns and gangs program to the RCMP. They cut resources at CBSA and our borders. And what did that do? That brought in drugs and guns into our country, and Conservatives made those cuts.
Oh my God, they actually lowered the microphone. Finally, it was so incredibly loud for no reason.
The fjord. Mr. Speaker, violent crime in Canada is over 14% higher than in the U.S. We learned this week in the media that a woman had been kidnapped, beaten and strangled in Abitibi. This government has abandoned victims, fully backed by the BLOC, who voted for C5, a law that allows violent criminals to serve their sentences in front of Netflix. BLOC members will have to answer for their actions and explain why they prefer to support criminals and rather than victims. When's the election?
When's the election?
Minister of Justice.
When is it?
Mr. Speaker, let's talk about investment. What we did on this side of the House is to invest to protect Canadians, including Quebecers. We invested in border services.
Verani is the worst.
We invested in scanners to keep our borders safe, particularly at the Port of Montreal. The results are as follows. What we saw in Quebec is a decrease of 42% in vehicle thefts. That's action to fight crime, to protect Canadians. Thank you. The Honourable Member for Dorval-Lachine-LaSalle. Mr. Speaker, our government believes that Canadians who work must benefit from support to allow them to face the rising cost of living. Last week, we announced the new Canadian Workers Rebate, which will provide a direct, tax-free benefit to millions of Canadians. Can the Minister explain how this rebate will make a tangible difference in the lives of workers? Thank you. The Honourable Minister of the Environment and Climate Change. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank my colleague for her question. It's a great day for Canadians because we are announcing a tax break for the holiday season to help families and workers, Mr. Speaker, to buy food, go to restaurants and buy children's clothing. It's incredible to hear the Conservative leader force his members to vote against this measure, even though 2 years ago himself he was supporting this. It's so hypocritical. And you know, we call that, in my area, a big talker and a small doer.
The Honourable Member for Dauphin, Swan River, Neepawa.
Mr. Speaker, yesterday at committee, the Environment Minister recklessly promised to quadruple the carbon tax despite American tariffs that will cripple our economy. He gleefully stated, Of course, we're going to continue with the carbon tax. With 40% of our economy dependent on trade with the United States, he should have just said, of course,
The Liberals ask questions to themselves because they're not on the same page and they all have no idea what's going on. They're a sinking ship that is voting to resign Trudeau out. Their own party hates their own leader.
Because of carbon pricing in Canada, it's generating $25 billion of investment every year in our economy, Mr. Speaker. It's putting more money in the pockets of 8 out of 10 Canadians, and it's helping us reduce our emissions for the first time in our history. If it was up for the Conservative Party of Canada, they would let the planet burn, Mr. Speaker. They would bring the economy down. They would let Canadians down. Not on this side of the House, Mr. Speaker. We're there for Canadians. We will fight climate change. We will support the economy. We will create good jobs for Canadians.
The honourable member for Dauphin, Swan River, Nipawin.
Mr. Speaker, this Prime Minister's radical environment minister is willing to drive Canada's economy into the ground with no remorse. The carbon tax will cost the Canadian economy $25 billion by 2030. In the face of 25% tariffs, the minister can do something. He can cancel his planned quadrupling of the carbon tax. If the minister is unwilling to protect our economy, will the Prime Minister at least allow Canadians to protect our economy and call a carbon tax election?
The honourable minister for Order. The honourable minister for the Environment and Climate Change.
The Conservative Party of Canada, when it comes to many things, including climate change, is extremely reckless. This is the party that's let the people of Jasper down, Mr. Speaker. For 4 consecutive years, they invested nothing to protect Jasper from forest fires from 2011 to 2015. Zero hectares of fire removal, 0 hectares of mechanical removals to prevent forest fires. They let Jasper down. Now they want to let the Canadians down in the face of climate change. Not on this side of the House, Mr. Speaker.
Order. The honourable member from Lakeland.
9 years of economic vandalism proves these NDP Liberals aren't worth the cost. The radical environment minister's own department now admits their carbon tax will cut $25 billion from Canada's economy in the next 6 years, but he doesn't care. He said they'll quadruple it anyway. Canadians already can't afford to eat or to heat, house or drive themselves. So with the threat of 25% crushing tariffs on Canadian goods, will the Liberals finally put Canada first and axe the tax for all for good so Canadians can actually afford to live?
Yeah. Cheers to that.
The Honourable Minister for Natural Resources and
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Energy.
I'm honestly not sure how Canadians can give any credence to anything that member and those folks over there say. That member on the other side of the House ran on a platform that included putting a price on pollution. It is the height of hypocrisy. At the same time, she and her colleagues are denying the science of climate change, and they are condemning our children to a future that is a terrible one indeed. From an economic perspective, they have no plan to build an economy that will actually create good jobs for our kids and our grandkids. It is absolutely shameful, the positions that they take.
Colleagues, please.
The honourable member from Scarborough Agincourt.
Mr. Speaker, last year we announced a $471 million federal investment in Toronto through the Housing Accelerator Fund to unlock nearly 12,000 new homes over the next 3 years and over 53,000 over the next decade. A few weeks ago, the Conservative leader announced his plan to shut down home building by making dangerous cuts to federal housing investments. People in my riding of Scarborough Agincourt can't afford these kinds of Conservative housing cuts. Can the Minister of Housing update the House on how he is solving the housing crisis?
Very strong.
The Honourable Minister for Housing, Infrastructure and Communities.
I want to thank my colleague for her advocacy on behalf of the community that she represents. Mr. Speaker, we are putting billions of dollars on the table to help cities cut red tape, to change their zoning practices.
I'm going to ask the honourable member, please, from Kamloops, Thompson, Caribou, to please not participate. He's not recognized by the chair. I'm going to ask the honourable minister to start from the top.
Fang has made a return. Fang has not been in the channel for a bit. Probably a CCP agent, yes.
Practices to speed up permitting so they can build more homes faster. Mr. Speaker, the Conservative response to this program, which is helping construction go up and rents come down, is to advocate for cuts to communities, including cuts in communities represented by 68 Conservative members of Parliament. Whoa. We are going to put money on the table to help cities build homes more quickly. It is a shame that Conservative members of Parliament won't even stand up for the communities that they represent to get their fair share of this important funding.
The honourable member from South Okanagan, West Kootenay.
Mr. Speaker, the government's massive public sector pension plan surplus is so large that by law they have to draw on it. This surplus was created by contributions from both the employer and workers. Yet the Liberals continue to leave workers out and follow the former Conservative two-tier pension plan, which forces 100,000 public service employees to work for 5 years longer than their colleagues. When will the Liberals reverse this regressive plan and treat all workers fairly?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the President of the Treasury Board.
Mr. Speaker, we obviously recognize the very important work done by the Federal Public Service. We want to make sure that we look into this matter very carefully as to where this money goes. It will go into the general accounts for the moment. We'll be discussing this with different parts of the government, including the unions, and we will come to the right decision. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Good job.
The honourable member from Saanich, Gulf Islands.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to raise with the Minister of Justice Bill C-63. We finally see some movement. It's gone for pre-study to committee. Legal groups that have looked at this, many people have reached me that this four-part bill will help protect children from sexual predation online if we look at parts 1 and 4, where we have large degrees of consensus. Parts 2 and 3 remain problematic. But can the minister tell us what will he do to improve and expedite passage of this bill to protect our children and other vulnerable people from online sexual predators?
The Honourable Minister of Justice and Attorney General.
I thank the member from Saanich Gulf Islands, who's often acts as the conscience of this chamber. What I would do is simply appeal to all parliamentarians. The issue of protecting kids from child sex predators should not be a partisan issue. Getting this bill into committee is of paramount importance for all of us who want to combat online sex predation, people who would take vulnerable children and spread revenge porn about them. If we all could just simply listen to Amanda Todd's mother, to Rehtaeh Parsons' mother, we can get behind this bill, get it to committee, get it off to the Senate, and protect children. That's what Bill C-63 is about. I hope everyone in this chamber can support it.
This brings us to the end of the period provided for oral questions. Now it's time for the weekly question. The Honourable Member for Mégantic-les-Érables.
The weekly question.
Mr. Speaker, for the first time in 9 weeks, the Government House Leader has actually managed to gain control of the agenda, and it only cost taxpayers $2 billion, $1 billion per day. I wonder if the honourable member has anything else to say about the tricks they will be announcing this week and next week. Would the Government House Leader, or will the Government House Leader do the right thing, the free thing? Table the documents on the Liberal Green Slush Fund scandal. Even Richard Nixon ended up handing over the recordings of his scandal, after all. The Honourable Government House Leader. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'm not really going to thank my honourable colleague for that question, because it wasn't a very nice one, but I will answer it. I am pleased to announce that later today, we will be disposing of Bill C-78. a highly important Government of Canada initiative which will allow Canadians to save through a Canada-wide GST/HST exemption. Canadians will be able to buy basic goods such as groceries, snacks, and children's clothes tax-free.
Even if my honourable colleague doesn't understand or appreciate how important this is for everyday Canadians, I can assure him that we do as a government. We are listening to Canadians and responding to their needs and helping them get through a tough economic time by providing a tax break as we move into the holidays, even if the Conservatives don't want that support to go to Canadians. Further,
we're listening to Canadians, she said.
Colleagues in the House that Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday of next week shall be opposition days. Earlier this week, I shared a unanimous consent proposal with the opposition parties that would pause privileged debate so that the Conservatives and the NDP could have their opposition days next week. I hope that we can find agreement on this motion so that the House can debate and vote on the billions of dollars needed to fund the programs and services that Canadians rely on and depend on and expect us to be able to deliver as all parliamentarians for them into the future. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Right on.
So what the hell did they vote on earlier today then?
House that the volume of earpieces will now...
Why was it so loud?
Du jour.
Ordre émanant du gouvernement, affaire émanante du gouvernement, reprise du débat sur une motion concernant les délibérations sur le projet de loi intitulé « Loi concernant l'allègement temporaire du coût de la vie, abordabilité » et sur l'amendement de Mme Larouche.
I'm just going to maybe ask the Sergeant at Arms to go check just on the outskirts. It looks like there's quite a bit of noise going on from there, and maybe it's just that the doors to the lobbies aren't closed, but I know that he's good to go and check it. Thank you. Resuming debate, reprise de débat, the Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Leader of the Government in the House of Commons.
Madam Speaker, I'll be sharing my time with the member from Aurora Oak Ridges.
Not Kevin.
Hill. Having said that, Madam Speaker, you know, it was an interesting question period today, to say the very least, when we understand that the Conservative caucus, led by their mighty leader, has taken yet another flip-flop, Madam Speaker. One of great consequence, I would suggest to you. And I want to take the opportunity to explain why it is that we're here and why it is that I say we've seen this flip-flop. The reason why, Madam Speaker, there's a need for a motion is because the Conservative Party has made the determination that they will enter into an area that I would suggest to you is borderline contempt of Parliament, and ultimately prevented the government from being able to deal with a wide spectrum of issues that would have a positive impact for Canadians, Madam Speaker, as a direct result of their multi-million-dollar game at for the personal benefit of the leader of the Conservative Party. So as a result, the motion that we are debating is necessary so that we can actually support Canadians, Madam Speaker, with the recent announcement that was made by the Prime Minister. And that is dealing in part with the issue of affordability, recognizing with the holiday season approaching, Madam Speaker, that an appropriate action that every member of this House can ultimately take is to support Canadians by voting in favour of a GST tax holiday on numerous products, Madam Speaker. It is a very powerful message collectively that every member can take to their constituents. I believe it's a wonderful idea.
And I believe you are an idiot. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for watching. I thought we were going to maybe get points of order or something of that type after question period, but everything has been pushed back due to the vote that happened earlier today. I want to thank you all for watching. If you are new here, make sure you hit that like button, hit that sub button. I will not be live tomorrow for question period because nobody shows up tomorrow. None of the MPs show up. It's like one or two of them. And they sit there and they just yell at each other in an empty chamber. So I will not be live tomorrow, but Monday, question period will resume, will continue. So I will see you all then. Have a great rest of your day or night, depending on where you are from. And if you are American, happy Thanksgiving. Hopefully you eat a lot and enjoy the rest of your day. Eat some turkey for me. Alrighty. Take it easy, everybody. Bye-bye.